Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 192. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Rowan, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Just how many episodes are we going to record this week? So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know. Jim and I actually, we've been talking a lot over the past week about just books that we haven't gotten to in a while, and that we really wanted to make sure we wrap up and start the year talking about some of these books before we jump back into our other segments. And we've got an episode that we just did here, which is Superman 695 and Secret Six number 16, where we really wanted to talk a little bit about the Superman universe. We're going to still do that big episode of Superman that we're talking about in January, kind of like what we did with Batman recently. But we want to start doing these a little bit more often, where we record these shows of books that just we feel like we haven't gotten to in a while that we really need to. And I wanted to, before we get to that, because we've got a couple weeks of content planned that's going to be coming up, and I didn't want to wait so long to talk about Superman, because it's been too long since we talked about Superman and just how cool it is. So we picked that issue as kind of a framing point. In that episode, in that segment, we do talk about Supergirl, we talk about Superman, we talk kind of lightly about the events that are going on in them, but we'll hit those a lot heavier in January. But I really wanted to kind of start talking about those now, and Secret Six is just how cool that book is as well. We also have some pretty cool rants on just what we feel about comics. I especially start having diarrhea of the mouth with it, but
really?
Yeah, just a little bit. I got a little emotionally charged at that point. Well, challenged too, but
I had my moments too. I had a couple.
I want to give a shout out to Do What from the forums. I started thinking about his rant about Jon Stewart, and it led me to talk about some of the things that I really love about comic forums, and I love his passion about that character. And then I started talking about like negativity in forums, and I want to kind of clarify before we get into that discussion, I wasn't implying that he was a negative person. I was using some of his commentary recently, because it's very fresh in my head, as a starting point for my discussion, and I loved how passionately charged he was with that. So I want to make sure that isn't lost before you get into that segment. I'm not picking, and I do say multiple times I'm not picking on him, because I'm really not. It was just his comments were so fresh, and it was such a rich discussion about his love for Jon Stewart that it led a lot of my thoughts on what I love about comics chat and what I dislike about comic chat. But it wasn't a reference to him. It was more of a global thing, and I just liked so much the conversation that I had with him that's why it was such a baseline. So I hope that makes sense, and that's where my motivation is on that, and why he was even brought up, just because I thought it was a very cool discussion. He participates a lot in our forum, and I thought he's somebody I always enjoy chatting with, so that's where that came from. Anyway, our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. It's the start of the year, and we're really doing this as a bonus episode, so we're going to kind of get into it really quick, but I do want to thank them for their support in 2009. They have been so wonderful to us to keep supporting the show every month, and it's really great. So I want to, if you haven't checked out their websites, if you're looking for back issue trade paperbacks, they have trade paperbacks, hardcovers, things like that you might have missed at incredible discounts. They're wonderful people, and there's free shipping on orders of over $50. And you got to remember that. I mean, that's a great deal. So if there's a bunch of things you've been wanting to get, especially with the holidays and all that, it's a great way to kind of save some money on some things that you've been wanting to read. So I want to remind everyone about InStockTrades.com. DCBService.com is going to be having the new books coming up over the next week, so definitely check out the January offerings at DCBService.com, but I want to thank them again for their sponsorship. Jim, we're kicking into this real quick because this is going to be an unedited show. We just got an episode out. We're in the middle of the holiday season, so this is a quick one that you and I are kind of doing off the cuff, so I want to tell people what kind of a podcast we are.
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Jim and I are recording this on New Year's Eve. We are also doing a recording tomorrow on New Year's Day, which is going to feature Justice Society of America, the most recent issue featuring Dr. Fate, and also the Justice Society of America Blackest Night issue. Then, over this weekend, we are also recording a Blackest Night episode. These are going to be these type of segments where we're going to be kind of just hitting some books. We're going to be coming back a little bit more frequently over the next week with these segments. This one's going to be unedited, so please excuse us on that one. Normally I go through and I edit the show. In this case, because it's a bonus offering and we're moving on to other things, I want to make sure to get this one out to you in a timely fashion. And it's kind of a holiday bonus. It's kind of a thank you for you guys for listening to us. So we put this together and put this time in there. This was supposed to be an hour and a half offering. You're going to see it's more than that. We just kind of let the discussion, as usual, kind of carry itself. So consider this our thank you to all of you for everything you've done in 2009, taking time to listen to us. We really love your support of the show and you taking the time to support it. So this is our thank you. We recorded a bonus for you. Guys come out. Actually got a couple bonuses coming over the next couple of days of just books that we feel that our listeners probably want us to talk about that we haven't in some time, and some that we're emotionally charged to talk about as well. So very cool. So without further ado, let's get right into the show.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
Jim, I really wanted to talk about Secret 616 because of the various books that we've scheduled and things like that. Secret 6 is my favorite book, and we have not had a chance to talk about this lately, and I really wanted to talk about this. We had that great Ostrander issue with issue number 15, where it was very heavily Deadshot focused. So, and if you're not reading this book, it's funny how as arcs end and new arcs start to begin, there's some great jumping on points, and this really is a very contained issue. It does give you some hints as to what's been going on with the team before and where the team is currently at. But it really is, if somebody's been saying, geez, I haven't been reading Secret 6, I'm kind of interested. You could pick up that Ostrander issue and do it with Deadshot, and it's very heavily Deadshot focused. It's a great Deadshot origins, not an origin story, but it's, there's elements of that, though, like where you get to really know Deadshot. It's a character-focused, character development story, where you can see Ostrander's clearly bringing in the roots of the character, but yet it's very thematic for where he's been in the series. So that's a great issue to pick up if you haven't been picking up the book. Issue 16 right now, I can't recommend enough. This is the Black Alice issue. If you're a Birds of Prey fan and you haven't picked up Secret 6, and you remember Black Alice from there, Black Alice is kind of a no-brainer to follow and want to pick up. This is a very cool and interesting character because she always shakes things up. But this is something where you don't really have to have been reading Secret 6 in order to pick up this issue. And it's very cool. The cover is, to me, breathtaking. I loved the Batman patch on her sleeve, and just the whole look of her. There is something about Black Alice where she looks cool. Like, you just wonder what she's going to do, and she is one of those characters that she's an enigma. You don't know what she's going to do next. You constantly wonder because her changing powers affect her. The fact that she can pull from these different magic users, the powers affect her. So she's a little off anyway. Actually, a lot off anyway. A
little off?
Yeah. She's a lot off anyway. But, I like her so much that I'm already protective of her. But she is one of those characters.
I'm protective of people I like as well, but,
She's crazy. She's crazy. Okay, I'll just go right there. She's completely off her rocker. But that's one of the things that's great about her, because when she comes in, it's going to be a good time. And this certainly fits the bill. It is funny, though, the way it starts. We'll talk about it as it starts off. It is an interesting... It shows that this character has a lot of range, because I did feel this was a very unique Black Alice story.
Yeah. And one of the things is talking about that Deadshot, the Deadshot issue, and then leading into this. This is just two separate writers, of course, but, and it was a beautiful flow-through. What we've seen from him before, what we saw in here, and then in this issue, it's some of the stuff we learned about him, kind of like how he's thinking and looking and acting a little bit different, kind of fit in with what we saw from him in earlier arcs. And then just kind of an explanation, he's trying to work out through who he is, what he's doing, why he's doing it, told it through with the kind of the backstory and his interacting with that one priest friend of his, and going into this issue, where it's the exact same guy, and it's we talk about character building and just, a flow through. I love saying flow through because it just so fits the Secret 6.
You do love saying flow through.
I do love, especially with Secret 6, because here's why.
I'm kidding. I'm just teasing you.
I know, but I'm going to continue going on as if you're not teasing. These are separate story arcs, very distinctive, actions going on, but one, builds into the next, into the next, into the next, and it is just, as I say, it's a flow through. It's like life, when you're doing stuff, one day to the next day to the next day, it's going to build on.
Wait. When you do things from one day to the next day to the next, it's a flow-through.
Right, and that's what we have in life. And we're seeing that in print as well. And that's one of the things I really, really love about the Secret Six. It's, it's building. And it feels so natural and realistic to me. We're dealing with a very super, powerful magic, person in Black Alice. But she seems normal. She seems like a regular, everyday person. And these characters, they're extreme out there, but there's this realistic quality to them, and that's a rare thing in a comic. In that I could actually see these personalities. Now, there's some tweaks to it that wouldn't be completely normal, but these are the same type of characters or people that would actually be in real life.
And all kidding aside, I mean, I'm teasing you, but in all kidding aside, I do agree with you. One of the things that I think works about this book is these characters are so well fleshed out. And even though the situations are very twisted, we know these characters so well that there is a realistic quality to them. They are human. They have flaws. They're extremes, but there are extremes in society. There are people out there who are nuts. There are people out there who go to extremes. And what I love about these characters are not one of them is alike. There are 7 very different personalities in this book, this issue. And each one of them, even though they are brought together because of these circumstances, each one of them is very unique with their background stories, where they came from, what motivates them, what their likes and dislikes are, what their loves and interests are, mistakes that they've made in their life, things that they've I almost want to say things that they've done right, but that's a very short list.
Regrets, I've made a few.
Yeah, but it is interesting. I want to talk about the cover again real quick, if I could, because I thought there were some interesting things about the cover. We have Ragdoll, Catman, Your 9 Lives Are Up, and, Dead Shots, I liked, You'll Be Missed, Our Beloved Assassin. You actually see his hand coming out of the ground. But Jeanette, she chose her love unwisely. And I almost wondered if it was like if you put it over, she chose another love unwisely, in reference to Deadshot. But I do think it was she chose her love unwisely. The interesting one I thought was, did you notice that Bane and Scandal had the same tombstone? I thought that was interesting because we don't know what is going on with them. And I don't know if that was a nod to that or if it was, an artistic decision due to space. I just thought it was interesting that the two of them were paired together on the same tombstone. It is their relationship to me, whatever it is, I don't think it's been defined yet. And I do think that there are some major question marks there. There were some moments in this issue where I was like, what is really going on here? And I'm continually curious to see what that is. Because I don't... before I was going on the whole father figure thing, I don't know that it's that simple anymore. I'm still wondering.
Anything with Bane is that simple.
No.
You can't look at, anything he does isn't just one on the surface level. You look back when he was first introduced, the way he took down the Bat, it was multiple layers of attack that he used. This character, and he's evolved and changed a little since those earlier days of him. So he's gotten a little bit more complex, a little bit more freaky, a little bit more, Bane-y.
For lack of a better word. No, you know what? It is
one
of
the... At least I didn't say a little bit more whatnot.
Yeah.
Come on.
No. Actually, there is... It's... Where I'm going to go with this next, and actually one of the points I was going to make about him fits exactly what you just said. One of the things that I've loved about Bane is I thought he was such a richly introduced character, and it was funny to hear Denny O'Neil talk on interviews about the fact that I think he did it on Comic Geek Speaking when he talked about it, that he wasn't actually supposed to be the main villain of Nightfall. It was actually Azrael all along. The way Bane was developed, he felt like the main villain to me.
Yeah.
He always felt like the main villain to me. So to see him now, and this shows that Gail Simone clearly went back, and I've said this before many times, and I'm a broken record with it, but it's the truth, to the core of who this character is. And this character feels like, you're right, there's been changes to him. He's not, he's not locked in a bubble. Life has affected him, but yet he still feels like the man that took down the Bat, and that's really important to me because I thought the character was always so cool, and I'm glad to see it being done right because I do think that this is a character who is very viable in this gray area because he's an interesting gray area.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
definitely fits in it.
Yeah, because, is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? What is he? He's definitely, he's his own kind of flavor.
Yeah.
He's that ice cream flavor that people don't know quite what to think about. Should I even try it? And
He's the chocolate-covered pretzels.
He is.
Yeah.
That's actually a great analogy for it. You kind of want to try it, and you'll probably like it, but you shouldn't. Now, this book handles the creep factor so well. I'm reading the Dark Tower books right now and The Stand from Marvel, because I'm a big Stephen King fan, and the adaptations there I think have been wonderful with the artwork and the storytelling and visually. One of the interesting things where Nicola Scott I'm loving her artwork. She's fantastic. This issue is a great example, though, of what the inker and colorist bring to that, and how important they are to keeping the mood and tone the same. We do have a guest artist here, and this is really great because Peter Wen, Doug Hazelwood, and Mark McKenna on inks, and colorist Jason Wright are there, and it's funny how this book felt very Secret Six still, even though we have a different penciler.
Yeah, looked a little different. You can, I could tell, but it wasn't like one of those jarring, wait, this isn't my title. Mm-hmm. This is still Secret Six. So you got to give really good kudos to the penciling and even, to inkers and colors. It still was Secret Six for me. I wasn't thrown off by it. I could see differences, but I still got my comic.
I agree with that. I think it's just tone and appearance and, I guess style is probably the best word for it. It shows that a creative team's really important.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm loving what Nicola Scott's doing over in that Blackest Night Wonder Woman right now. And I was sitting here, I'm like, and that was my one thing. I'm like, well, what's Secret Six gonna look like? Because it's a very important book for me, and I was pleased with this because it is. My favorite artist right now is Nicola Scott. So to not have her on my favorite book, it was something I got to admit I was very worried about. And this was nice. It was it's a good looking book still. It's got the appeal to it, and it just showed that creative team. There is something. I would have been having a very different statement here if the appearance felt very different to me. And I think if there was a different inker and a different colorist right now, it would be the jarring is a great word for that. I think it's really important to keep the tone and style the same to this book, and this looks really good.
Yeah, quoth the Raven, nevermore, man. This opening just I love visually, and then just the comments going. I'm like, who could this be? It really, I'll be honest with you, I didn't see this coming.
You thought it was one of them.
Yeah, I was thinking it was one of them. I didn't realize it was our, scumbag Kurtz, who we get introduced to, for a very short-lived appearance in Secret Six. But I just loved how this was building on the road. Off the first panel, you see off in the distance the cars. Second car is a little bit closer. Third panel, fourth panel, splat! No more bird.
But his whole commentary on his rating system for women and things like that, and I'm like sitting here. I was naturally assuming that it was all guys, because I'm like, there can't be a female in there because this guy would be punched at this point, and rightfully so. It was because he's really being pretty vile. Although for Secret Six, it's kind of normal. I'm thinking, is
this calm?
But then I was trying to place it. I'm like, it's almost too lucid to be Ragdoll, and yet. It kind of fits Deadshot, but then I'm like, well, it's kind of even for him a little strangely crass. And I'm like, it's definitely not Catman. So I was trying to place which one of the guys from Secret Six it could be. So it was funny, you and I were doing the same thing as we were reading that page. Did you label somebody? Were you able to identify somebody from the Six that you thought it was?
No, I exactly what you just said is what went through my mind. I was like, there's no way that's Ragdoll, because it's not trippy enough, and Catman wouldn't even think of saying this type of stuff, and a lot of it just didn't fit him. And I was like, this can't be him. This has got to be. Who is this? And then that first panel, when the next page, when you see the shackles, you're like, that's prison shackles. Wait a minute, okay, that's who's talking. Who is this guy? And it immediately got me going. I'm like, I'm thinking, are they going to kill him? Are they setting him free? What are they doing with this guy? And it was something, just listening to the way he was describing what his rating system, and then I started getting beyond, like, oh man, this guy is some type of freako killer. Ooh, this should be interesting.
It does show how I read this book, though, because I have certain expectations now on the writing level of this book, and what, like, on how much I'm going to be thinking into this and how deep I'm going to get into these characters and what's going on in the story. I do read this book very carefully now in my first read through, which is interesting. You know, I like the mystery, so I like to try and solve the mysteries as they come along beforehand. Even when I'm horribly wrong, like in this case, you know, I turn the page, I'm like, because I didn't come up with a Secret Six member, I'm like, who is this? And I thought I'm going to be the smart guy, I'm going to figure out who it is without them even showing me, and I'm like, okay, who's this creepy dude? And the second page, right away, you know, this is a, you know, somebody who's killed kids, he's, you know, a molester, he's, you know, just... And then the power of this guy, because you get the impression this guy, deep down, at his core, is a sniveling wimp who just needs to be beaten down. You know, and just the creep factor of this guy, the insecurities this guy has to do what he's doing, to try and take power in this way. He's victimizing people because he internally has no self-worth. And that's one of the great things about this. It's very deep look at a serial killer and what this guy does. And the fact that there's nothing cookie-cutter about that. I would love to know how you prepare to write characters like this.
Yeah, that's got to be tough, because it's, you know, she goes right into, you know, with the psyche, and you get, this is just, it feels so accurate for this, because it really did have little skin crawl moments. I'm just sitting there going, this dude is just complete scum. Oh God, please let him be the target, please. And I was sitting there, I'm like praying that he was the target, and, you know, the Six were just going to destroy this guy. And I was just, and even as he keeps going on to it, with when we actually see the grave site and it's 4 stones, yeah, it's 4. Good, not great. 5 is great. And I'm just like, oh my God. Oh, please, someone just cut out his tongue and do various nasty, nasty things to him. And it was just building and building. You know, just the level of vile. And you can see finally when the cops, you know, just have it and they snap at him, he does the little, you know, the move, and he's like, oh, well, then I forgot where every other body is. Sorry. And I was just like, oh, God, someone needs to hurt him. Someone needs to hurt him really bad.
When I edit the show, and even on episodes where I loosely edit it, there's a lot of post-production work as far as getting it ready to actually be uploaded. I'll do that stuff late at night because I've got to get my schoolwork done first, you know, stuff for my job. Well, when I'm doing the editing, a lot of times my wife watches a lot of the crime dramas, a lot of your realistic ones, like your cold case style shows where they're taken from real cases and things like that and kind of brought in. And it's funny, you'll see either dramatized, on some of those shows, dramatized versions of the characters, or actual interviews with real versions of, you know, with the real criminals. And you see psychologically, I'm like, whoa, this guy coming off the page reads very creepy. He reads very real. You know, where he puts on one face, but then you see the face change depending on the situation. You know, it's like she'll watch those Dateline shows, too, where they catch the guys in the houses.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and in all of those cases, it's funny how there's so much overlap between those style of characters. There's distinctions. And, you know, there's definite distinctions between different personalities and different people, but there is certain overlap. And what I mean the overlap is the drastic change, where there is one face and then that mask is taken off when they're caught, and you get to see at the core of what they really are. This guy's a great example of that.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine that I worked with for a little while, and he had a case where it was one of these little, you know, pieces of garbage who liked little kids. And as he's sitting there, and he mentioned it the one time and then just kind of stopped talking about it. You know, so I don't, you know, those kind of stuff you don't push. And then just another time he was talking to him, and he mentioned again. And then eventually, as over time, you know, started learning some stuff like how they caught the guy, how they worked the, you know, the online stings and stuff like that. And very interesting to hear the process they go through. But talking about when they were questioning this guy, he actually got the guy to not only just trust him, but, kind of befriended this, piece of garbage and made the guy actually think, hey, I understand why you do it, and he's sitting there explaining how he had to get this guy comfortable with him, and they got full confessions eventually out of the guy, but he's sitting there and he's like, he's like, and that was multiple years ago when he's telling this story. He said it's still just, skeeved him out. It's still just, kind of disgusted him that he actually had to sit there and chat with this guy friendly and make the guy think he was his pal, and he understood why he did it with the little girls. Oh yeah, kids today, they don't look, they don't look the same age as they are, and kids are more mature now. And it was and he's just like, he wanted so many times to jump across the room and just pound the guy's head in, but he knew he couldn't do that. One, it's, police brutality, but the other side is he did have his job he had to do, and it was just, he had to push down those just hatred and just the vileness. And just as whenever I read a story or I see a TV show or something that has this type of stuff, I think back to the conversations he and I had, and just, I'm like, when I see that kind of reaction, that type of emotion, that type of just, if I could see my friend in these scenarios, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is a good writing. This is one of those things where I could, as I'm reading it, I'm remembering this stuff, and I'm just remembering, the look on, his face when he's sitting there just, talking about how he had to deal with this. It was like a kind of another one of those wow moments, because it's experiencing life beyond the comic being brought back in, and just very just memories, and it added to my hatred of this guy, because I'm like, God, please, oh man, we got to take this guy down. Please let him be the target.
I chuckled when you said I knew a guy, because it's funny. I've known you for well over 20 years. And there's times where you will genuinely surprise me when, like, I didn't know where you're going to go. And that's funny because of the amount of time I've known you, because I've known you since the 80s. And I'm like, does he know a guy who's got a mask? And he's like, he's done this, or where is he at? I'm like, who does he know? and do I know him? It was just, I just found it really funny as we were going through.
You never know with me.
I don't, because you've got stories sometimes where I'm just like, where in the heck did this happen to you?
It's one of the interesting things, getting to work with cops and ex-cops and former feds and stuff like that. Once you've worked with them long enough, they start opening up to you and they start trusting you, because they know you're not going to throw out names and this and that, and even though I'm telling stuff, I've never said who, told me this or what the circumstances were, and that kind of, there's limits to what parts of the story I tell. And, as you get their trust, they tell you some just amazing stories that, you just, I never thought in a million years there's some stuff that, guys are just openly, talking about, and just like, you guys think this is nothing. I'm like, I'm not a cop, guys, okay? This is like, wow to me. And it's, you get a room full of them together, and they'll all have very similar stories. And it's not just like, this police department or this, all these police departments deal with that. And it's actually, for me, it's added kind of a level of respect that seeing some of the stuff they've had to deal with. And you get on the news, you see on the news a lot of times the bad cops. You see, the crooked cops going too far, and the various levels of corruption and whatnot. But I've gotten to know so many good, honest cops who got into the line of work for the reason you're supposed to. Protect and serve. Protect the innocent. Serve the public. That kind of stuff. And so. That's why whenever we start talking cops in the comic, I am a little bit protective and a little bit passionate on it, because I have these real life people that I know that I'm like, the guys I know, they wouldn't do that stuff. That's a cop thing. That's not. And so it's
funny when we see Black Alice here. It's one of the things I really like about, and I think that is connectable about her, even though she's a lunatic, is to a certain extent, she's like a fanboy's dream of what we'd like to have power-wise. She's able to adapt the powers of any magic character that she knows of. But I like that there is drawbacks to it. Like she can take on the powers of the Spectre, for example, but taking on that much power is something that can only be done for a limited amount of time, and then she kind of wears out. And I like that the question even comes up when she's talking to the Six about. I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but it isn't. I'm looking at her, and you see the costume where you got part of the Phantom Stranger in there.
Yeah.
A little bit of Zatanna, a little bit of a nod to Black Canary as well. But you see amulets and just shows that she's... I mean, Phantom Stranger would definitely be one. You're talking about a powerful DC Universe character. That would be someone who you'd want to be channeling. But there is something very cool about her outfit. You know, it's got a little bit of the goth thing going on, but yet it's got the superhero elements to it. Yeah. I mean, there is a definite sexiness to the appearance of Black Alice. I mean, there's something to that for a comic fan. Where you're like, that kind of a mixture and amalgamation of outfits it's cool. I mean, we'd go to a convention and be like, okay, there's somebody who is really into comics. You know, it's not just dressing up for the sake of dressing up. She's pulling from various heroes and getting a little clever and all that. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of cool. You know, I mean, and that's one of the things that's nice about her is that she's fun to follow because she can pull all these different power sources. You never know, is she going to be pulling from Blue Devil, Phantom Stranger, Enchantress? Who's she going to pull from and why and how? And those are kind of the neat... There's Zatanna. These are neat things about her, and I do like her as a character. And the fact that she's crazy, and that's one of the things I like about this book, with the fact that you can follow villains, characters that would be traditionally considered villains. You really are doing and looking at situations from a very different perspective. Like, this could be a Batman story following a serial killer. But it would be a very different approach and a different tone if you had Batman following him than the Six.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about it, is you can take different stories that have been told before and stories that are very contemporary, and you tell them in such a different way now because these characters are going to react in an incredibly different way. We've seen serial killer stories before, but the creep factor of this and having to deal with this from this perspective totally changes the whole dynamic. And that I love that. It's just so rich.
Oh yeah, dude, man. And it was like as the story's going on and we finally see, Catman and Lawton there, and I was like, as soon as they started breaking him out, I'm like, no, guys, oh man, and I'm just like, I'm getting mad because I know they're getting this piece of garbage out, and I'm thinking, and it was funny, within the first couple panels, I'm immediately thinking, like, oh, God, yeah. They're not going to be happy to do this, especially once this guy starts rattling off, and then I was thinking, like, okay, maybe we're going to have another issue where these guys kind of start butting heads, because one will want to kill him, and the other one's like, hey, we got a contract, and I was just thinking all these, like, but then I'm like, are they going to do that? No, and it was just... Within 2 pages, I'm sitting there reading, and I went through an emotional roller coaster because, one, it was cool seeing the fight sequence where they just drop them, and they drop them quick, hard, and professional, but they don't go for the kills. It's just pure knockout. But, then I'm enjoying that. Then I'm thinking, oh, man, they're busting this creep out. Ugh. So it was, high and low going through as I enjoyed what I was reading, and I thought it was a great story, but I was like, I felt bad for my friends because I knew they'd feel guilty letting this guy go.
The thing I love about this, though, we got this Katie Sanchez's dad, the one that he's brought in front of. I love that was the 9-year-old whose grave we got to see there. There was something about that for me that was really important, because it was great to see that they finally took Kate, like, that they followed through on that character, because that was such a vile moment with him, and such a moment where he, like, empowered himself with it. That's what I really hated about him. When you talked about hatred of him, this guy was empowering himself by revealing the vileness of what he did, and then yet holding off information about anybody else to use that as a power hold. For him, that's what it's all about. He used his power on each of the victims, and it was all about victimizing them. He's trying to victimize the police there. In many ways, when he's with Deadshot and Catman, he's trying to play them too. Oh, the way they treated me in prison and things like that. It's all, you see the art did a nice job of capturing, like, the smug look on his face at various times, all the way through, where he thinks he's one step ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. It was a hoorah moment for me when he's like, yeah, oh, your benefactor, Katie's father. I was like, yes. I was cheering because I knew, oh, yeah, he's a dead man.
and rightfully so.
Laugh at the torturing that I knew was about to happen, but you know what? it's one of those things where this is a piece of garbage who's, getting what's coming to him. And it was, I always have a hard time with that, about the vigilante justice. Is it right? Is it wrong? But with this thing, this guy was getting away with this. He was, had the whole insanity thing going. He had I was giving up the locations of where the victims were, and that he was doing that to avoid the death penalty. So this guy would rot in jail probably for the rest of his life, or maybe rot in a psychiatric ward or something like that. Maybe even get a chance of getting out. Who knows? But seeing this was one of those things where I was like, okay, this is now we're gonna get some justice. And I was just like, it's, in a way I was happy. And, you sit there, and as soon as I'm happy about it, I'm like, I shouldn't be, because this is vigilanteism, but it's one of the things I love about the Six. This is, you think it's going one way, it zigs the other way, and boom, next thing you know, you're like, wow, emotional roller coaster.
The whole concept, she was so purdy, and his using that as justification. This is still a 9-year-old. And I think that was one of the brilliant things about how this was set up, because we hated him by the time we got to this point. I loved that the dad was even holding back, like didn't know if he could do it, couldn't go through with it, because, he's not wired that way. That's not who he is. He wants revenge for what happened to his daughter because he doesn't feel justice has been served. And it does, make a statement here. What is this going to do to the dad? See, it's one of those things where, why is our system in place, and how does it protect people? Well, this type of thing, we got to remember, Dad has now used a lot of money to get a chance to get revenge on this guy, but what is that going to... Dad will be forever changed by this. He was forever changed by the fact of what happened to his daughter, but taking this action will have a psychological and moral effect on Dad that will forever change him. He will never, ever be the same man again.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, both events are going to be very traumatic and tragic for him. This is going to take it to another level. Dad, at this point in time, is probably going to be a very unwell individual for the rest of his life.
Oh, God. It's just thinking, like, going on what happens after the comic, with this dad. Because I cannot imagine the pain and just the suffering he is going through. There's no way I could probably think, I can maybe, no, there's no way I could. I know that for a fact. Just, I've seen, you've seen like, news, real life, and just various experiences, these parents who have lost a child. And we have a guy who not only lost a child, but he knows this child was, the sick things this monster did to her, so you've got that going on. Now he's going through, and it's, I love the advice that it was given. It was just it's like, amateurs start with the eyes or the groin. Leave those for last. Start with the knees and elbows. Cutting the joints produces far more than the legs, arms, or torso. It reduces the risk of spasms spoiling your work. So it's not even just about torturing. It's about keep him laid down. Take your time with this. And then the added bonus, hey, whenever he moves, and he will move, it's like recutting the joint all over again. I was just like, wow. This is just unbelievable.
These books remind you, though, why we have laws, though, and why there is a system in place. Because when you're looking at this guy, and I totally get why these characters did this, they strapped him down. They took his clothes. And again, to make him vulnerable and victimize him. And it really was, at this point, this is not the cocky, smug guy that was at the gravesites by any stretch. He has now been put in a position where he feels like his victim's dead. And they've really put him in a very vulnerable place. And it is funny how this is not going to bring his daughter back, which is ultimately the only thing that really would heal him, is his daughter coming back. Yeah. There's no redemption for Dad at this point. Dad is heading down a path that will forever psychologically scar him. And it's one of those things where, Catman and Deadshot, in many ways, they're psychologically scarred permanently. From the lifestyle they've chosen. And that's one of the things that I enjoy about this book, is that we get to see what makes villains tick and who they are. And it does add something more to the heroes when you know the villains. It does make it. It makes you more motivated to. We'll talk about. Okay, we got two Simone books. We got Wonder Woman, and we've got this. Diana has her share of issues, but Diana's a hero. I mean, her motivations are pure. Her goals are pure. There is something about her. And to see that in contrast to such a lack of moral motivations. And I like that it affects Catman differently than it affects Deadshot. You know, when Deadshot talks about how ornery Catman get and things like that, it does show you that this world affects Catman in a very different way. The two of these guys, I love when they buddy cop up. I think some of my favorite segments are in Secret Six when we get to see these two together, because there's definite things that connect the two of them. They're comrades at arms. They've been through enough together that there is a respect level between the two of them. Yet, at the same time, there are differences. And to see them each look at each other through their differences, it somehow just adds something different to the dynamic. It adds something more to the characters. They feel more real. Because we all do that. You and I will sit down here, and just through this show, I mean, we've known each other over 20 years. There's distinct differences that at this point in time, I'm still learning between the two of us, which is amazing considering the amount of time we've known each other, but it's also very true. You never really, unless you're that person, you never really know 100% about a person. You know, that's part of the fun. Part of the thing I enjoy about doing this show with you is getting to know the way you think about things, the way you see things. You and I can read the same books and enjoy them for very different reasons. And we get very passionate about it sometimes, where you'll see something one way and you're like, no, this is really the way I see it, and I'm really invested in this. And I'll see it a different way, and you're really invested in that. And yet, you know, we can both be wrong, both be right. One of us, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. A lot of it's driven due to experience. And it's fun. And I think that's what's very true about these guys. I get that real vibe about them. That's where it like kind of compares. You know, we've known each other for a long time, but yet there are distinct differences. And the same thing with these characters. And it's something that's always going to be true between these two. There's always going to be differences between these two. This book can run hundreds and hundreds of issues and still would have that, and I hope it does, but it'll still have that feel with these two. And it'll be something that, you know, even if the team rotates out and, you know, we have issues without one or the other of them or something like that for a stretch and the band comes back together, because we see that happen with comic book teams sometimes. When they come back together, it will always feel like that with these two. They're my Wolverine and Colossus, you know, and characters like that. Batman and Superman, you know, there's, of this book, you know, the two of them together, there is something rich about that relationship. I do feel like that there's a sense that these guys have been friends for a while now, though.
Yeah, it's an understanding and acceptance, really, of each other, who they are. You know, because even when, you know, back in the gravesite, you know, when they're letting out and, you know, Catman uncuffs him and just walks away, guy's like, hey, what's his problem? He's got a stick up his butt. Yeah, and it's just, he's got issues lately. And it's an acceptance like, hey, come on, I'll ride with you in the back. You know, and I was just like, it's a cool moment. And then as they're going on afterwards, they even have a little chuckle like, hey, you want to get a burger? Yeah, just no veal. I was like, oh God.
But that's the funny thing between the two of them, and I like that because you're right, it does feel real. You know, my best I mean, we all have that. You and I have that with each other. You know, there's times where we're together quite a bit because of this show now, and there's things about both of us that, you know, are quirks that we both have that you just accept as differences. You know what I mean? And it is one of those things, and I mean, that's what's I loved about this, because you're friends, it's always the positives outweigh the quirks. And you always sit there. These two, I don't think, because of their being professionals, could ever truly say that they're friends to people. They could never let that. People would naturally assume it, but they wouldn't. Like, we would easily say it. But these two, because of the fact that with the Secret Six and they're professionals and you know they're this squad and you know it's that kind of mentality, I don't think they can let themselves be that publicly, vocally, if that makes sense. It would be something just people would have to assume. But I do like that it just naturally feels that way, that he's almost apologetic for his friend, which you have to do from time to time. Yeah. But it is always, you get that, like, this is a friendship that, it's one of the reasons why Deadshot, deep down, we all knew where Deadshot would go. We all knew that even though he was trying to stick to his code, his assassin code, you know, his own sense of, when I do a job, this is what I do, we knew that there was that part of him that was wavering, even if he wouldn't ever admit it.
Yeah. He doesn't want there to be as strong a connection as he has.
Yes.
With him, because he knows there, in his mind, he's like, hey, if I can't get too close to him because I may have to put him down one day.
Right.
And that's just the nature of his life. He knows this, and they each know this about each other. But the two of them, I like this friendship that has grown over all of the Secret Six. The mini, the Villains United stuff, and then throughout the series, we're seeing now just this friendship grow between these two. We keep saying buddy cop moments, and it really is. Looking for, and it's funny because when you first threw out the Superman Batman thing, I'm like, yeah, and I was kind of thinking Batman and Nightwing.
Oh, sure.
It was like kind of like a same level type people, but.
That's more of a.
They look at
because it's a father-son relationship. It's one of the reasons why I wasn't thinking that. Yeah. Because I think that's almost too close.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, kind of like Nightwing and Tim Drake, kind of like how I see them together. And it's once again, it's there's an age difference there, which there isn't here, but it's a recognition of each one has very similar to how they operate with just little tweaks and little specialty areas.
I'm thinking more like Hal. See, for me, it's more like Hal and Ollie. Because they're traveling the road together. There's that. I'm not saying where Hal and Ollie are at now, but I could see them. I could see them down the road being that. This is more of an early. They're still not there yet. And when I say Superman and Batman, I don't mean that they're that established with their friendship. But I do think it's comrades who have been brought together due to circumstances. And it's interesting to see it from a villain's perspective. And that's what I like about this book. And it is one of those things where if you're not reading this book, you really need to give it a shot. And this issue is a great example of giving it a shot because I do think that you get the whole flavor of this series right from this issue. And it's a very accessible issue. So if you're not reading this book and you're like, oh, I've always wanted to try Secret Six, or it'd be fun to, just kind of see if this is my cup of tea. This is a good issue to do it because it really does kind of give you a flavor. And it's
of who the team is.
Yeah, and it's contained. It's a very contained issue. There is, there's elements of things that have come before. There's elements of things that obviously are going to come after this, but it does wrap up pretty clean. And it's a good issue for somebody if you're like, hey, if I pick up this one issue, I can get a good story to read. And if it's not my cup of tea, I don't have to pick up the next issue, but I've got a complete story. And I like to recommend issues like that because I feel like, it's a good spot for somebody to say, if I picked up that one issue, there's been a lot of value to it. I got a good story, even if it wasn't my thing. But this is a good issue to grab for that. And then if you like this one, I would definitely pick up the Ostrander issue for Deadshot for a good character study. But this is a good one to get a flavor for the series, I think. This is a good series because it does focus on more than one character, and I would grab this one. And it is, if you're following Blackest Night and you're considering it at all picking up the Suicide Squad issue, it is a cool issue to pick up to get a flavor of this team beforehand if you don't have any background with Secret Six. Because I think that would be fun going into, because the next issue after this is next month's Suicide Squad issue. So 16 is a good one to pick up to kind of get kind of a vibe before they go into that 3-part Suicide Squad one for anybody that's collecting all of Blackest Night or was thinking of just getting the Suicide Squad one, for example, to follow through. That's going to be a 3-parter into this. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, big time.
When Black Alice winds up in front of the car, I loved the one panel. I caught your act in there, guys. I saw what you did. And you see the two of them. Yeah, and you want to take us in, kid? Is that it? And you see them both. He's got his gun, and Catman has his blades.
His claws, yeah.
And you're sitting there watching them. I want to know what the job pays. But the two of them are ready. This is instinct. These are professionals who have been in the game for a while. And I love that the two of them, there was nothing spoken between the two of them. And at this stage, they have worked together enough that they can rely that the other one is just going to know what to do if the time comes. That's where I start seeing that kind of buddy cop superhero relationship. These are two guys who have not met for the first time. This isn't a one-shot issue team up where the guys have the fight first and then they kind of start working together and they don't have a strong enough relationship to know how the other one's going to operate. This is much different than that. And I like that different feel as well, because I love those kind of team-ups that you've never seen before. I'm loving Brave and the Bold, what Straczynski's doing over there right now with these kind of unique team-ups that we've never seen before. I think that's very cool, so I'm not knocking that. I like that kind of thing. But those are all the more interesting to me, too, when you have this to contrast it. You know, these kind of team-ups. And actually Black Alice is contrasting that as well because they never teamed up with her before. And, is she nuts? Because this is a character who's been around enough that... and I love that it is Catman with his relationship with Huntress, that this is the story... It shows that he's talked to her a lot more than we realize.
Yeah. There's definitely more interaction than we've seen on camera, which kind of, gets me going, wonder what's going to happen there. Are we going to see more of this? And that kind of, it just leaves it hanging out there, but it doesn't, like, throw it in your face and say, look at this. No, it's going to be a nice little subtle side thing that I know is going to pop up later. But I also like the fact that he knows the power levels, and he's like, hey, we're dealing with off-the-chart, magic power here. She can become any magic wielder out there. We need to lose her, and lose her now. It's, it's the whole retreat, it's a tactical retreat. It's not being a coward. It's not running away. It's not being, having faith in your abilities. It's knowing your limitations, knowing who you can throw down with and what you can do to that. If they were to try to attack her, it would not have been pretty for them. And they're fierce warriors, yes, and they can improvise, adapt, and overcome, but there's still a level of, there's a stupid fight, and then there's a, intelligent battle. This would have been a stupid fight. They would have died very quickly, very painfully.
Her age here is an interesting factor. And I don't mean just because, maturity. I mean because of the fact that she has not had these powers for a long time. This is still something new to her. She's still figuring out who she is. And I love that she's getting involved in something that she doesn't quite understand, yet she's witnessed some horrific things. She witnessed the whole torture segment and didn't blink. And I do love that becomes an issue later, where Catman's worried about that. I would be too. And I love that Catman's worried about her lack of scruples, her lack of morality. Because, so you're saying, she has no line in his mind. What will happen if she really snaps? Because she's very calm over all this. So this isn't like an extremist reaction to what this guy did that was so terrible. This was her reacting very coldly and very calmly to a horrific thing that happened to a 9-year-old. Well, what happens when she really gets mad? What happens when she really snaps? What is she capable of? What could she do? And how do we deal with that? I mean, they've seen some extreme shows of power from her in this issue. From the Blue Devil to later what we see with her with the Banshee to the fact that she can turn into the Spectre, can tap that kind of power of a god. And to what would it be like when that's unchecked, when she's really snapped? And he's right to ask that question. Is this something we want to deal with? Because she's auditioning for us and look what she did. What happens if we make her mad? And as a professional, do you want that kind of variable? So you got to be sitting there saying, and I love the fact that I would be questioning, what is Bane doing? And that's very real to me. That's very natural because Bane's taking over is a very new thing for them. And you would be questioning that. Because these are relationships that are based on a business decision, as well as convenience, as well as personal safety. The Six was originally formed because they were running away in Villains United from the Society. So, a lot of times they got together to protect themselves because there's strength in numbers, against overwhelming numbers even. Yeah. They had to do that. So, and they've been turned on before by members of the team, or turned on members of the team before. Yeah, so it's a very real concern in this group. This is not the Justice League. And I like that reminder, that repeated reminder that bringing in a quirky variable to this, it's not the whole team's going to band together. Everyone's going to have very different sets of opinions as far as Black Alice goes. From blatantly not wanting her part of it, to wanting to help her, to wanting to use her, to being downright scared of her. And to talk about Ragdoll.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think this is the quirky relationship that was hinted at where two people end up together that shouldn't.
Oh, God.
I've got to think it's these. I thought it was pointing to Bane and Scandal, being honest. Now I'm thinking it's these two.
Which has me just going, oh, dear God, what are we going to see?
Yeah. And what don't we want to see?
One of of the things I really liked is, once again, we see just the versatility of the team. She's sitting there. They know they can't outpower her, so they're like, okay, well, make her feel unwelcome. Okay, I got an idea, and they're bring her into the car, have her sit with them, and it's not about, trying to fight, trying to run her over anymore, because they know that's not going to work. So let's make her a little uncomfortable by going to a gentleman's club.
Well, especially at her age.
Yeah.
I mean, geez. Because, she's 16, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think, she's definitely a minor.
Right.
So, the fact that they're... Not even just the fact that, a female going to one of those establishments. There's been multiple ones of these that I've gone to where there have been females in there for various reasons. We got a minor going into this place. I was just like, wow, this is going to be interesting.
Now, here's an interesting thing. I love the way there's a difference between how Deadshot and Catman handle this situation. Catman's asking all the questions. The guy who was so quiet earlier in the issue when it came towards the real dark situation where Deadshot was doing all the talking. Now Catman is. Now here's the funny thing is, as a professional, I guarantee you Deadshot's multitasking here. He's hearing everything Catman's saying to her. Because he's used to that as an assassin. He has to be aware of his environment and his surroundings. So while he is throwing out these one-liners and talking about the fact that, there aren't any strippers and, seen more boobs in a convent and that type of thing, okay, get all that. But I guarantee you this dude is listening to what Catman is saying right here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's making notes and he knows exactly what to do. And he's actually even probably formulating a plan if I ever have to throw down with her.
Yes.
It's, because she talks about...
Or, more importantly, if I ever have to escape her. Because I think there is a question here right now is, and I agree with you, it's probably multi-layered. What would I do in this situation? What would I do in that situation? The wheels are turning. This guy, I guarantee you, is very rarely 100% down from being on guard. Of any time having to be... That's why he's still alive.
Yeah, oh yeah. And it was funny because as Catman is questioning her, I do like that she's opening up and she kind of maybe even realizes what he's doing. Where he's probing for information, trying to find a weakness, trying to find an area of attack. And she even says, like, the more power I steal, the weaker I get, and then I lose control and it can drop off any second. And she's like, but until that happens, I am the most powerful creature on this planet. You want to give me a try? Kind of like I know what you're doing. You're trying to look for a weakness. Can you take me? So just kind of like that false bravado, puffing out your chest kind of thing. Look at me. I can still kick your butt. And it's a really cool vibe, because, there is a lot of confidence issues she has. Granted, she does have, the craziness and, or I don't know what you can call it with her. She does have confidence in who she is, but under the surface, there is still that 16-year-old kid who has a lot of insecurities. And every time we've seen her being used, she's been that blatant powerhouse out there, but she's had those quiet moments when you see, this is a kid who's got issues. This is just a kid who
deep scars.
Needs something. Yeah, there's deep scars there.
Yeah. And it is one of the things that I like about her is there's nothing surface level about this character. That's good writing. I mean, you want to know these characters all the way through. You so know that this, like, strip club kind of vibe with the superhero costumes and all that would actually really do well in real life.
Yeah, it would. You think about it. Just how many, just to go for just to see what the heck they're doing, and then, you got your geeks would go, ooh, let's give it a try. I don't know. Personally, I would go. I don't know if I would be like a regular. I wouldn't be like, Norm, when I walk in. But if a place that opened up with this type of stuff, I'd probably go and check it out just because I had to do it just to say I was there at least once.
Oh, yeah, because it's kind of a quirky kind of thing. And it is funny to see all this. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, it's funny how realistic this actually is because this would do quite well.
Yeah. Now, I do wonder the Ms. Freeze they have on there, if she happens to have blue skin or if she's a body paint.
Oh, I'm sure it's a body paint.
Hey, you never know. She could be, there could be something else there. She could be maybe a meta.
I don't think any of these are metas, though.
I'm just joking.
No, I know. No. I mean, it's kind of funny, though. I do think it was... and I started questioning that myself. And it is funny how they probably each one, in order to get hired, had to have a gimmick.
Yeah.
what would their gimmick be and how would they fit in. And they were probably, the owner would be looking to, I love how there's a Mitzias Pitlick in the background and all that. Yeah. And Eclipso and Harley Quinn, obviously. And
there's a Bane.
A Bane, yeah. Yeah, that's the irony of that.
And in the background of the one panel, you see the Hawk Girl. You see the wings and the mace.
Well, that just belongs. I like, you know what, though? I love out of tastefulness. It was a good choice because it's Hawk Girl. Notice she's the one that's kept to the shadows.
Yeah. Well, it's the shadow of the hawk.
It's oh, jeez. I wasn't going there, but that was good. I was again trying to be my protective Hawk fan, but gotta love the nod to the Hawks. This is interesting because I love when Bane's talking about the fact that a man who is a slave to his own genitals is nonetheless a slave. And Ragdoll, I love this guy every issue. I completely agree. And I don't even have genitals. May I borrow about 100 singles? So it's a good point, because how can you be a slave to something you don't have? So, and Scandal getting caught in the place because she really wasn't there to see her.
Yeah, but hey, you got to do a quick cover. Mm-hmm. And I did chuckle when they're talking, when they see her, they see Scandal's girlfriend up there, like, we're gonna have an issue here if we see her goodies before Scandal does. They're like, right. You're a couple of dates too late for that. I'm like, oh.
Then we go into this one part where I liked how Jeanette evaluated her, and the two of them were complimenting each other on their costume styles and their looks and things like that, because the two of them actually are very similar in that respect, in their approach and their style of dress. So I liked that kind of vibe, and Jeanette would analyze her. But Jeanette's looking at some of the realistic things, you are, I'm afraid, a bit too much of a new cabbage for this unsavory lot. Sorry. And it is interesting kind of, shaping things up. Are you ready for this? And how age and experience is a factor here. It's a very quirky group that's already a lot off its rocker, I should say.
A little bit.
But to bring her in there, it is funny how she is more of a wild card than even Ragdoll to a certain extent.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a weirdo, but there is still
he's a lot of a weirdo, but
yeah, a lot.
But I guess what the point is, there's a consistency to his insanity. She's not consistent with it, so I would be. It's funny having him there. You know what to expect. You really do, in a strange way. You know what what kind of deviance he is, and everything about him. So. He throws you for a loop, like, the things that'll come out of his mouth, but you expect that.
Yeah.
With her, you don't know if she's going to be lucid or if she's going to be off her rocker. And this show of her power right here is a great example of that.
Yeah, when she's taking down security, police, or whatever these guys are, it's over the top. She doesn't need this power level to take them down. We saw earlier that, Blake and Lawton took down all those cops, boom, 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 no problem, no hassle, no fuss, no mess. She's going over the edge. She doesn't need to have this much power to take them down. And overwhelming with power is an issue, could very easily be an issue, because you think about just one, tactically speaking, you think about when she throws out this power, how she could lose them suddenly. If she's not, more controlled, more, reserved with her abilities, she could be in the middle of a big power fight with a massive meta and just go over the top with the powers, burn herself out. Next thing you know, she's now a liability to the team, not an asset. So,
one thing we're glossing over that I really want to talk about is the initial reaction to her using her powers. Catman says, in no mood to piss off the local cops. Looking at why are we doing this? Why are we escalating something when there's not necessary? And Bane, the strategist, agrees with that. Why are we doing this? And even Lawton, I love that Lawton's already planning the exit strategy, if needed. He's joking around about it, but he's showing again that he's a professional. And it's a lot of times, I love reading when he's throwing out one-liners or joking about the tater skins and things like that, that there actually is a logical method to what he's thinking through as he's going through all this. And it's funny, a lot of times humor is used by somebody like him to showcase and often to make people underestimate him. His overall goal would be, okay, this guy's all about joking around. He's not taking really much of anything seriously, when the fact is exactly the opposite. He's taking it just as seriously as the other two, if not more. But he doesn't want anybody to know that. And that's part of his survival skills. Leave them guessing. Never let them 100% know how in the game you are, and they'll make a mistake. They will underestimate you. They will slip up, and you take advantage of that. And that's something that I think he's wired that way. Deadshot is wired the way to keep people guessing about him, and will probably always be that way, because he's probably lived that long for that reason too, because they always think that he's not quite a top tier, and I love that. That's kind of a neat thing about him that I think is very real as well. Now, I do love that Bane, again, this is the guy that took down the Bat by observing first, and by letting other people do things to him to wear him down. In this particular case, let's see what this girl's got. What do we have to deal with here? This is the show. You know, this is the show that Catman said he was coming to see. Now, this is really what we want to see.
You're going to get to see what you want. Yeah, I like that. That was, again, another clever usage of Bane. And just seeing her, as I said, she just did over-the-top power that she didn't really need to do. But, you know, you kind of get an understanding of what she can do, where she is. And I like Jeanette's reaction when, you know, she tapped into her power. It's like, you little twig of a girl, what did you do? And, you know, there's going to be repercussions to that later on. You know, Jeanette's another one of those, you think that she's one way, but she's really another. There's going to be another side to her, and there may come a time when she goes for some vengeance for what she did. And she could very easily wait until Alice, you know, does something where she drops this massive amounts of power, she loses her power and needs to recharge a little bit. Okay, while you're recharging, I'm going to kill you now. So we could very easily see something like that happen later on in a future issue. So stuff like that is kind of gotten me very excited to seeing where this is going to go.
It's also an important jump-on point for people who don't know who Black Alice is. Because what's happened here is you've got an establishment that she actually takes a little something from the person that she's borrowing the powers from. So it's not as simple as she's able to invoke it in herself. She has to pull from that person. So when she pulls from the Spectre, she's actually pulling from the Spectre. And I think that's interesting to see that that's what's really going on here. You know, and to see the reaction of how this violates the person in question. Jeanette was violated there by her.
Yeah.
So, and there are repercussions to that. You know, and what is that going to be like? And we see that Jeanette's not happy about her at all. And I do love how the power affects her. You know, it somehow increases her aggression. And it's different from different powers she taps into. I think that there is that natural aggressive tendency because of her powers, and I can't help but wonder the more and more that she pulls from it, the crazier and crazier that she gets. I mean, from what we've seen, that's what seems to happen with her. She just seems to get more and more aggressive the more that she has. It is one of the dangers. You know, I think we all talk about how great it'd be to have superpowers and all that, but you got to question, what would it do to you mentally to have superpowers? Would we all be able to be so moral? It does, you know, they talk about absolute power corrupting. It is kind of funny. What would that do to you? Being able to, would you be moral? Would you be able to do that? And I like that exploration of it, that it wouldn't be so clean and cut for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, the hero path is a very hard, you've talked about it. It's one of the great things you said on the show. Being a hero is not an easy path at all. You have to make decisions a lot of times that are selfless. Incredibly selfless. Once you start getting selfish, I mean, you know, Booster Gold gets labeled as, in his past, having been very selfish with, you know, putting his face on everything and trying to make money off it and all that stuff. And that's very true. But even he has always had a certain amount of selflessness to him, in the sense that, you know, he never went down the villain path. Whereas this girl right now is showing, you know, I think what's happening with Black Alice would happen a lot more than people would realize if everybody had powers. Because there would be that kind of internal greed. I'm not trying to lump her in with everybody, that I think people would naturally have to say, wow, look what I can do now. And, you know, what would it do to your job structure? Imagine going into work and having superpowers. How would that change you?
I know. It's, you know,
your sense of consequences, you know.
Yeah, and it's one thing I wonder with her, if she kind of has like the Jericho syndrome, where we saw him kind of do the heel turn, but it was because he had taken in so many different personalities and he had a piece of them in him that it kind of drove him insane. I wonder if the more she goes into, she's getting these other creatures' personalities intermixing them with hers.
But, see, in her case, I one of the things I like about her is, and I know what you're saying, but I think on the surface level you can make that connection, but I don't get the vibe that she's pulling in personalities as much as she's pulling in the powers themselves and the side effects of the powers. A lot of these magic powers have side effects. And when you intermix different side effects like that, no one person is meant to take on all of those side effects. So even though, she's going from like having the Banshee power to pulling in part of the Spectre to pulling in part of the Phantom Stranger, and each of these powers have their own little quirks. We've seen that those characters have different effects due to their powers, different consequences due to those powers. What would it do to you to pull from all of them or from lots of them, to have all those side effects? Not all of them do, but some of them do. And what psychologically would that do to you? And so that's interesting. I think it's the powers versus the personality of the person that are doing it in this case, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's the interesting. I like learning about her as she's going on. It's one of the anytime she makes an appearance, I like kind of like saying, what is going on with her? What is this doing to her? And it's something that feels, because I've read so many Jericho stories. His is very different because he actually is going into another person. It's kind of like a parasite kind of thing, in the sense that she's pulling kind of their power base from them, but then it's becoming her own versus having them actually in there. It's different than going into Jeanette's head, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Where she sees her memories and things like that, and that's because Jericho's actually affected by the physical memories that person has, and I don't get that vibe at all from Black Alice. But there is an interesting comparison in what you're talking about, just in the sense that I think that her power is affecting her, but I think it's the side effects of the actual powers, which I find it's an interesting power study. It makes you wonder, like, would I really want to have powers? It's one of the few times in a comic where I'm sitting there saying, how cool would it be to be able to have powers? But then she's showing us that that's not always such a good thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things when I was younger, I would have, wouldn't even enter the thought in my head, would I not want to have powers? It's one of those, as time has gone on, I'm like, I don't know. Even if I could get the powers, if something could happen, I don't know if I'd want them. And I look at even now, powers I would want compared to powers when I was a kid, what I would want. And I want different power sets now than I definitely did when I was a kid. And hers is one of those interesting powers where you're getting the magic, but we saw with the new Dr. Fate, just having the power, doesn't mean you can tap into as much as what the person did. If she tried to tap into the Helm of Fate, she wouldn't be as good as some of the classic Dr. Fates have been.
And the nature of it's funny when we talk about JSA on the next episode when Donnie joins us. Your exposure to Dr. Fate is pretty limited as far as what he has. Some distinct disadvantages to the previous Dr. Fates. The Helmet of Fate in itself has actually changed as far as what relationships were in there and things like that. It's actually funny, the character of Mordru that's in that issue. We'll have to talk more about that there, I think, because this Dr. Fate has distinct disadvantages. And you're right, she would also have those same disadvantages, and it would affect her in a very different way. We actually got to see that issue of Helmet of Fate with her with Black Alice, and I quite liked that issue because you got to see how she would react with that, and she's an interesting character because of it. It's funny, Gale was kind of exploring some of what Peter Petrelli on Heroes goes through before there was a Heroes, with the Black Alice. Because I do think it's one of the interesting things with Peter Petrelli on Heroes is seeing him. We don't see it as much now because he can only pull one. Well, I guess it is kind of a little bit more like it now when he's pulling the one power at a time. But we got to see how pulling all those powers was affecting him and how it affected Sylar, for example. Yeah. So it is interesting to see it explored here. This is different. It is funny how you can have so many different heroes and villains that have this kind of a power structure of sorts, but yet slight variations on it really make for a very different character where you see different rules and consequences and what it does, and they all feel different. Like, Jericho feels different than Peter Petrelli, feels different than Black Alice, feels different than Siler. I mean, who all four of those characters, you're just talking about four characters that have these type of power sets. They all feel very, very different in the rules and consequences of them because the way that they get their powers. Siler, even talking to heroes, Siler and Peter get their powers in very different ways. There's nothing the same about how the two of them adapt and grab their powers. So Siler's is much more of a personal violation, and you got to actually kill somebody. So in most cases, unless they're clear. But it's interesting just to see how I like that about this character of Black Alice, that she does not feel like any of them. And when she drops, I love how when she drops the power of the Banshee, that there's still some consequences that at the moment with the white hair, she hasn't quite completely dropped it. I need money. My father's sick, because they're going back to her saying, why do you need to be here so bad? Why would you want to be a part of this? And we get to see that she still is a kid there. That's one moment where we see her. This is a 16-year-old still, and in many ways, a 16-year-old who has not had a chance to be a true 16-year-old. So it's interesting to see how that she's had to sort of grow up too fast in a world where you don't want to grow up too fast, because it's going to make you even nuttier.
Yeah, it's even kind of. I like how this ended with how Bane ended it with non-combat. Granted, he did send the full team after her, and she was throwing him around, but
because of Scandal, he sent the full team after. He did not do it until Scandal was threatened. Did you notice that?
Right. Oh yeah.
Again, and that's that relationship. There was that bit where the two of them were sitting at the computer that I'm wondering. I'm like, okay, what is going on there?
Yeah, he took over the team, but he really didn't take over the team. He did it to help her, because it was like, her being in the team was too much for her. She needs time away from the team. She needs to, think of herself and not always the mission. And I think it is kind of like, that's why I'm taking why he took over.
Well, no, he's trying to kick her completely off the team. I don't think that he's not looking for a temporary person. I think he's looking to take her off the team altogether, because she even says it. You can't seriously be considering kicking me off the team to bring her in. And I love how Ragdoll does this point in time. She just said that I'm hot. Not just hot, but all kind of hot.
Yeah.
Which is just such a bizarre. I'm like, I did not see that coming. That does fit, though. She would be that quirky guy that she would regret being with.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way you wouldn't regret that on so many levels.
Dude, I'm not even. I'm trying to keep those thoughts out of my head.
I don't think we're going to be able to.
It's
there's no way. There's no way Gail's not going there.
Oh God, I know. It's
talk about such a twisted, missed opportunity. There's no way there isn't going to be. I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying we're going to see anything on camera, but we're definitely going to. There's something going to come of this, and we are going to find out on some level. It might be just as in passing, like the dowry was, or it may be more, vocalized than it is. But there's going to be some reference to this on some level. There's no way.
Yeah, I'm scared. I'll admit I am a little bit scared.
It's twisted. It's very twisted.
It's funny we say twisted, but in a beautiful, wonderful way. I'm honestly I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing Jeanette and her, because Jeanette was violated in the Power Steal. I'm looking to the Scandal and her, because there's gonna be issues here. She she doesn't really want to be off the team, and there's gonna be It's a complicated relationship going on, and things just got made worse. And you add to it just that final panel that we were talking about with between Blake and Lawton, where he's saying, hey, she saw us talk that guy through torture, and it didn't faze her. Mm-hmm. Not only did it not faze her, she wants to sign up. What are we dealing with here? And it's that question, what are we dealing with here, that has me just kind of very giddy for the next couple issues to see what's going to happen with her, where she's going to go.
It's such a good book.
Oh, yeah.
This is my favorite book. I have no hesitation. 16 issues, all 16 of them, it's been my favorite read of the month. Every single time.
Yeah.
And you know what? We all have different favorite reads. And I think it's one of the reasons why, when we do this show, like, well, why do you guys do this show the way you do? Why is it always so positive? That's my experience with comics. I mean, I honestly, if I'm hating a book, I'm going to dump it. It's kind of there might be certain books that I would collect as far as putting them in my collection, but I mean, it's not going to be something I don't need. I don't focus on that with my comics. It's just not. And I encourage people, like, if you find yourself getting really angry with your comics, there seems to be a lot of people on the net. I'm not talking about in our forum or anything like that. I'm just in the net in general. I see a lot of people who just, like, feel this need to express anger about comics, but yet they never talk about anything that they like. If that's your focus in reading comics, it's really, you got to, like, change up your pull list or something. You know, maybe that might be your focus on the internet, and that's not really the experience you're having with comics. Then that's fine. Okay, then that's your thing. Whatever. Okay, but if that's your true experience with comics, you are missing the point. This is an entertainment medium. You should be enjoying it. Previews is too big a catalog. And forget, I'm not just talking DC. Previews is huge. If you do not have comics in your pull list that are doing what Secret Six is doing for me right now, I know it's doing it for you too, Jim. But if you don't have comics in your pull list that are doing that for you, if you don't have one in your pull list that's doing it for you, you need to change that up somewhere. There's got to be some books, even if you're collecting books, if you're a collector and you want to keep that run complete, there's got to be a couple of books in there that you can swap out and, like, play around with, experimenting with some new titles to try and find those titles that do this for you. Because if it's, I mean, maybe it's not doing, Secret Six doesn't hitting you the way it is for me. I think it's a book. My personal opinion is if you haven't tried this book and you're looking for something different, you've got to try this book. Because that's what I like about it, is it's so different and unique from everything I'm reading. But do yourself a favor and you know, we're all different. Make a pull list where you've got a couple of books that are doing this for you. Take a couple of titles that you're like, if you've got, like, you know, if you're pulling 5 books, for example, and all 5 of them are right now, you're just kind of like, I am not getting anything exciting out of these. Take a couple of them and make them your kind of play titles. Keep your budget the same. And just say, okay, these 2 I'm just going to completely drop, and I'm going to start trying new books. Every month I'm going to try 2 new books that look interesting to me until I find the 2 that give me that feel. Because you got to do that. This medium is too exciting. I see a lot of people on the net who are constantly bashing comics, and I'm like, when do I believe you're a fan of them? I can't relate to you at all. Because I honestly, every week, I can't wait to tear open my box and start reading. And if you're that miserable that you're constantly posting, like, how awful everything is, you are missing the point of this hobby. Really missing the point of this hobby. Because I can't fathom that. Not with the size of previews. That's just me. I have trouble buying and reading all the books that I want to. That's my big problem. It's not... You know, I mean, there's plenty of, you know, if I need to trim, there's plenty of room to do it because there's so many books I want to read that I can't. I don't get it. I just don't. I get being mad at some changes and things like that. The great example would be the Jon Stewart discussion. You know, Do What on the forum was talking about Jon Stewart. And he's a fan of Jon Stewart, and he wants to see that character more. Okay, well, that's something that, like, you want to see more of that character. I think this last issue of Green Lantern is probably going to make him thrilled. But... that type of stuff I totally get. What I mean is, though, it should be, you know, and I'm not using him as an example in this case, but in general I'm saying I see a lot of people on the net who just never seem to enjoy much of anything, and there's no point of reference. Like Do It was saying, I've enjoyed Jon Stewart, he's a great character, he motivates me. Well, that's something where, you know, he's talking about this is a character that's important to him. So that's something positive. This character he really cares about. That's a positive comic thing. I see a lot of this where I'm like, what... Where are you a comic fan? I don't know, I'm going on a little tirade here, but I think it's kind of an important point of why we do this show the way we do and why it's the format it is, because I feel I think there's nothing wrong with being a fan and wearing it as a badge of honor. I think a lot of times we're afraid to be fans. I think we somehow feel that we've got to be critical to legitimize this hobby. We've got to tear it down to legitimize it. My point is, I think it's already legitimate. And I think there's a lot of books out there that are just outstanding that need you to vocalize for them. They don't have to be the same books I like, but I think there's a lot of books out there. Our sales numbers in comics right now are not where they should be. And I don't care what anybody says. People are saying, well, there's so much competition, all that stuff. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, there's competition out there, but there's a lot of people who I think have never read a comic book that if they did, they'd love it. It's not going to be everybody. Not every person will read comics. I get that. But there's a lot of people right now. I think the video gaming audience, there's a lot of people who are gaming right now. If you play a lot of your story-driven video games right now, and so many of them are, those video game fans, your role-playing fans, RPG fans, they are comic book fans in the making. They so are comic book fans in the making because a role-playing game, your good Squaresoft ones, this Dragon Age Origins was out, all that stuff, that is serialized storytelling right there. It's ongoing serialized storytelling. Those games last 60 hours of continuous storytelling. That's a comic book fan in the making. That person can read a trade and get it. So I think that there is an audience right now of people who aren't reading comics and I think it's your video game crowd is definitely very much those people. Oh, sorry.
All I was just gonna say is testify.
I love this stuff. I love this stuff, and it's one of the reasons why we do what we do. And this is more of a call to arms to people saying, complain about things if you need to, because there are things that bother you. And Duwat's example, I wasn't picking on him; I was more legitimizing it. Saying I agree with him. He wants to see more Jon Stewart. I get it. I want to see more Carter Hall. So I get that vibe. I understand where he's coming from. There's characters that I want to see more of. I want to see more Ryan Choi. And I could go off a whole list of characters I want to see more of. So I get that, and I'm with him. And I'm not picking him out, and I apologize to him immediately because I'm not trying to single you out and saying you don't. Because he was saying how much he loves Jon Stewart. What I'm saying is for people out there, and I think he's one of the people who said when we were shouting out Power Girl last time, that's a fantastic book. He was one of the people who was saying, thank you for shouting out Power Girl. And if it wasn't him, I apologize too, because a lot of times I reply to so many forum posts, it's trying to keep everyone in their head. But was talking about how great new characters are in those books and things like that. And he's right on that. I think there's a lot of new characters and new books out there that need people to be advocates for them. We're being an advocate for Secret Six here because the book is freaking awesome. Yeah. And I'm going to tell people till I'm blue in the face, you need to try this.
It's easy to talk over an hour on a book when you enjoy it so much. And this is just, we're, spreading out the love here for something that we absolutely just adore. And it's funny when we were sitting down talking, we're thinking, we're going to do a little light episode. Hey, let's talk Secret Six because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. And I'm just laughing in my head saying, yeah, light episode. Okay, we're talking Secret Six. This is going to be,
Well, it's why we podcast, though. It really is. Because, this isn't a money-making operation. It just isn't. You don't make money in podcasting. Anybody who goes into podcasting thinking to make a ton. Are there podcasts that do? Yes. But you're talking about a very small amount of them. We don't do this because I'm a school teacher. I'm not looking to leave my job. I'm not going to this is not a secondary source of income for me. The time investment into this show, the time investment right now for you and I in this, we're doing this because we love it. Mm-hmm. I love comics, and to be able to have this outlet to be able to tell people why, this was something we didn't plan. Our original premise for the show completely diverted to this. So, it is kind of one of those things. This is a labor of love, and if you're podcasting, this is why you do this, to be able to kind of rant and rave about this stuff. And I'm just encouraging fans to really do your best to go out to forums and be an advocate. Anything you feel the need that you want to get out there and vent about and complain about, do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, so please don't misunderstand me there. What I'm calling for is balance. Make sure you go out there and go into forums. I apologize to Duwat because I do feel I am not picking on Duwat, and I'm not saying that Duwat is a negative person or anything. I don't mean it that way. His example of Jon Stewart was just so recent, and I loved that chat because Duwat, many times, he and I have been totally in sync shouting out new books that we're missing that we think are great, that we're both advocates for, that we don't want canceled. So I always want to say Duwat's a fantastic forum poster. He posts all the time, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying that Duwat's a negative. He isn't. He's a great guy. I pulled out his example just as one, to kind of illustrate this. But I'm saying to everybody out there, use kind of his example, use other people's example. Make sure you're shouting out books that you love, that you're like, Jesus, let's get some numbers on this book. Try this book out. Let's not let this book get canceled. Too many good books have been canceled. Yeah. That Manhunter and Blue Beetle are two books right now that I'm losing their second features. I loved them when they were series. I want them back. So
we got to stand up and we got to rage on. We got to rage out there about what we're excited about, what we want to see, what we are loving. Because there's somebody out there who is looking for something, and they're looking for something to go with. Maybe your forum post will be the thing that'll get that person, into a book and go, hey, that's kind of neat. Because you and I, occasionally, we'll get emails from people, and I love getting these emails when someone says, yeah, I picked up so-and-so, man. After hearing you guys talk about it, it was great. And I get so excited when we get those emails because I'm like, yeah, see, I'm helping somebody enjoy something that I love as well. It's kind of it gives you the the little warm fuzzies, kind of like, yeah, we're doing something right here. We're doing something good. This is what we do. This is
something
raging on.
It's something we believe in.
Yeah.
And that's the point to it. There's no other. I'm not looking to break into comics. I'm not looking to write comics or draw comics or things like that. It's not. I don't have, first of all, I don't have the time for it. I don't have the great idea for it, where I'm like sitting here right now, boy, I've been writing a ton, and I've got this great portfolio to show people of writing that I've done, because obviously I can't draw a decent stick figure, so I'm not going the art end. I don't have that motivation. It's really, I'm here because I'm a fan, and I'm proud to be a fan, and this hobby's done so much for me over the years that I feel like this is kind of my way to give back to it, and to hopefully kind of rally cry people to, I think most of the people that listen to this show listen to it because they've got that quality about them. They're fans. And I think we are the ones that are going to make a change in the sales numbers for comics. Comics are getting canceled that shouldn't be. I think what we consider top sellers is disgusting. In the sense that I'm looking at those numbers, I'm like, these are considered great numbers. You and I both grew up in an era where there are books that are canceled now that would have had insane numbers back in the day. Yeah. Because comics are just not as readily available as they used to be. And we need to be the advocates for people that aren't reading comics. And, I've done it as gifts before. I've bought trades for friends of mine that aren't comic readers or casual comic readers to try and, say, hey, these are ones, that you should be reading and things like that. And some of them do read comics now. I've got friends of mine that directly do. We had Chris Kendall on during that Smallville episode. He's a guy who was not reading comics, who is reading comics now because of conversations that he and I have had and things like that. So there are people you can reach out to. If we're all doing that, we've got a couple thousand listeners to every episode. If we all did that and brought them in, look how many comic book fans we could get. One
you
person, we each do
and
one.
They tell two friends,
yeah.
and so on, and so on.
But I mean, it is. I think it's one of those things. It's kind of like my rally cry for the end of the year to just kind of say, let's let's make sure in 2010 we're an advocate for the hobby. I think there's too many great books that are canceled by too many great creators. So. And
Norge, just so you know, right now I'm wearing blue and green, so I'm magnifying the will and the hope, into the words. So
you really are too, aren't you?
I'm throwing it out there with it, man.
You really are too, aren't you?
Yes. You know me well enough to know I
am. Well, no. I've got all my rings sitting right here. I actually play with them, and these little. You got me this set of 3 Hawkman figures. The Hawkman, the 2 Thanagarians. They're always right on my desk, and I literally am. When I'm not paging through a comic because we're chatting about it or notes, I've literally got something. I really do have issues where I need to have something going at all times. Yeah. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk some Superman.
Ooh. Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Jim, friend of the show, David Barron, colorist David Barron, has a blog that he's kicking off again. It's http://myzombies.blogspot.com, and it'll be in the show notes. But he's asking for anybody who is interested in following him to pop out. He's going to be talking about art, photography, comics. From the show that he's just an incredibly interesting guy. So I'm anxious to see what he's going to be blogging about. It's going to be really cool. I love, in this day and age, that we have this great contact with comic book creators, and that they want to reach out to the fan base. So this is really cool. So if you've listened to David on the show, if you haven't, go back to some of our episodes that David's been on, and you'll see why you want to be following his blog, because he's an incredibly interesting guy. Just as we were talking about it, I know you are signing up and getting ready to follow his. So I encourage any of our listeners to do that. And it's one more time, it's myzombies.blogspot.com. If you have a Gmail account or a Twitter account, you can actually follow him from that site through those. So when you log in, if you've got those, it's really nice and easy to follow it. If you don't have a Twitter account, it's a great way to follow blogs now. This does link to Twitter. So it's very cool to do that. Even if you don't post to Twitter yourself, Twitter's a lot of fun. My Twitter account, I enjoy not only posting to our show website through there, but for myself, I enjoy going onto it and just clicking on all the people that I'm following. It does their blog posts. And there's a lot of comic book creators on there that are posting things all the time. And it's just a lot of fun just to get their thoughts and just to see what they're writing about and what they're thinking about. So it's very cool. I love the fact that there's that fan outreach now that they're doing, and David's doing that. So definitely follow his blog. I think it's very cool. So this social networking thing for comic fans is something, I think as kids, we always wanted this. And this is where technology is giving this opportunity now. And I applaud creators for reaching out to their fan base. I think it's very cool. We're in a community aspect now that I think is something that we never imagined. At least I know when I was younger in the 70s and I first started reading comics, I never imagined that there would be this kind of activity, interactivity with comic book creators. And I applaud it. I think it's very cool.
Yeah, this is huge now. And it's kind of, it's weird. I'm a little old school in that, the technology does, freak me out a little bit, just, being completely out there. And that's why I'm not as active as you are on all this stuff. But it's the social networking is just amazing. And sometimes I'll sit back and just watch and with just kind of like slack jawed just awe of how much information is out there. Find this person. Oh yeah, click, 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 boom, 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 pulling stuff up. And
the advantage of following people, though, and why you want to do that, like when you go to David Barron's blog, why you want to follow it, it is, once you start following people, it consolidates everything for you. So you don't have to seek each individual person out. Like I know because I'm following it through my Twitter account, it'll post to my Twitter. So I don't have to go through the hassle of having to follow each individual site. It never used to be a hassle. I mean, I used to have bookmarked sites. But this actually is even more convenient than the old bookmarking of websites in the sense that all the blog posts get, kind of put into one spot. So it's very cool to have everything consolidated. It makes it nice and easy. If you want to look for some comic goodness and comic chat from creators and stuff like that, it's all in one spot. So I just think it's cool. And it really is, technology is now making it more and more easy to consolidate and link everything together so you don't have to jump from place to place. And if people are having trouble doing that, just email me, and I'll help you do it because it's a lot of fun. And the great part is when you were talking about, Jim, how you're like, I get kind of overwhelmed or something like that, the nice part about it is you can be as active or inactive as you want to be. You can be just an observer. Like your Twitter, you don't have to Twitter yourself to take advantage of Twitter. You can literally just follow the people that you want to follow and just enjoy reading what they're chatting about in Twitter. Or you can participate and do your own Twittering, where people can follow you and do all that. It's all up to you and how you want to handle it. But you can be just an observer. Forums are like that too. A lot of times people are forum shy because they're like, well, geez, I had to participate. So you can sign up onto a forum. And if you post occasionally, fine. If you don't post at all, that's fine too. The advantage is just being able to look at this discussion, just have the opportunity to interact if you want to. And that's kind of fun. So it's definitely something I encourage you if you're, if you've been avoiding doing like, a Twitter account or Facebook or something like that, sign up on those things because it's fun. It's fun to follow people and kind of see what they're doing and things like that. And Facebook especially has like privacy settings and stuff like that where you can do it. But blogs and stuff like this is great. I think it's great that David's doing this. I applaud comic creators because you figure they've got a very busy schedule. They're under time deadlines and stuff like that. But this shows that they consider the fan community important enough that they're doing this outreach and just saying, hey, I know, people love that interactivity. They like being able to know what I'm thinking and doing and stuff like that. And, I'm going to kind of throw some of my thoughts out there. So it's kind of nice that comic creators are doing that. And I think it's something we as fans should support, and just, show them that, hey, this is great. Thank you for doing this and that type of thing. I think it's a very positive thing. And, I think it's something as fans we should be positive about approaching and supporting. So, I don't know. It's kind of cool. I thought it was neat that he's out there doing that, and he's kicking off 2010 with that because he said that was one of his goals for 2010 to get that up and running again. It's kind of cool that we're able to announce that here. So awesome stuff. So that's one more time. That's myzombies.blogspot.com, and that's cool. Jim, I know we're doing a big Superman show in January at some point, but I didn't want to. I felt like we were deliberately holding back talking Superman, and I think we were. And I don't want to do that because there's issues that are coming out. Obviously, we're going to be talking about January's issues during that time. I have been so enjoying the Superman titles. And Superman 695 is the most recent issue that came out. It's number 21 in the triangle numbering. I love having the triangle numbering back. Yes. I have been loving the way these books have been crafted because while they'll cross over from time to time in ways that make sense, like Supergirl and Action Comics had that great crossover in the Hunt for Reactron. Then we had the stuff going on with Mon-El that's been crossing over. And I like, though, that the books will go and be like single titles where they're telling their own individual stories where it's necessary, and then they kind of organically flow into each other where it makes sense, where a crossover would happen naturally. I love that kind of overarching feel that no matter what's happening in the books, World of New Krypton, any of the other books, it does feel like that the events in each one affect the other ones, whether they're crossing over or not. That's interesting to me, where you'll see like a panel that's a reminder of what's going on in another book, or you'll hear characters thematically talking about things that are going on in other books and how, the race relations right now between the Kryptonians and the humans. Because of the fact that there is somebody right now who is really pulling this racism and using it.
Oh, yeah.
Or speciesism, whatever you want to call it. And using it because, they're actually technically a completely different
species. Yeah.
But is using that card and using it in such a way to manipulate. Because I think it's something that's very true in our society. Fear breeds this. And this is what it is. General Lane is afraid. And deathly afraid, and he's using that fear to craft an agenda, and that's the creep factor of this. Because I'm like, this is something that is very human, and it's embarrassing how human it is, and it is something I think we all need to be aware of, and we need to lash out against it. Because I do think it is something that's true of our society, and it's something that, as advanced as we become, it's something that we should all be disgusted by.
Yeah. And it's not just even, because it's that fear, phobia, and it's not even just because we've thrown out racism, speciesism. It's the whole hatred of something or someone that's different. And it's different for any number of reasons. You got sexual orientation,
sure.
You got race, you even got sex. There's, the sexism still out there. We're 2010 coming up in a couple hours, and we still have blatant sexism out there. We still have the blatant racism, and just it really does, man's capacity, and I say man, I mean mankind, people, male, female, everybody, our capacity to hate and our capacity to love just really shock and awe me sometimes, because you see these wonderful stories of these people who just selfishly give of themselves, and Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Dr. King, Gandhi, these people who are just these epic names of peace and love, and then you have these opposite sides of these equally nasty, vile people who just do these despicable things. And it's not even the big names that we have out there. There's like just everyday people out there who, have hate and contempt for somebody they've never met before, never talked to, never done any with, but because of one factor, their skin color, because of their, their sex, because of, orientation, because they, are this religion or
their
that
job.
Religion. It's
wait, even socioeconomic status.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
Rich and poor.
People will make assumptions based on socioeconomic status, where you could be the same entire background, everything like that, but just because of socioeconomic status, and you don't know. Our economy is in the pits for a lot of people. You and I are very lucky right now in the fact that we still have the same jobs out of all this. Yeah. But you actually, and I will actually say this about you, you've gone through in the past few years a job roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, since doing the show.
Yes.
You have worked multiple jobs since doing the show. Your job is stabilized now, but, it wasn't always that way. There were times where we were literally recording and you had just started a new job.
Well, when we first really started recording, I was unemployed, and that was part of the reason why I was borrowing comics from you. Is because of I didn't have a job, and there's no way in my head I could justify me starting to pick up comics again. Then once I got a job, I'm like, okay, let me start. I got money coming in. Let me start doing the pull list. Let me start doing some stuff, and that's where it really grew. And just it's kind of an interesting thing just looking at that.
But it is, and that is actually a funny aspect of the whole thing. The importance of having friends in this hobby was the fact that, because it was great for me, the borrowing thing was an ongoing show joke during that time. And we played it up. But, it was fun for me to be able to have this kind of interaction, dialogue with somebody. But it is something, when we talk about whatever your economic level is right now, there are ways to enjoy comics and things like that for free. and do that if you need to. Even if you got a pull list, there's ways to read more and enjoy them. Libraries are a great example. Daryl was talking about it on the episode we were on with him. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. There is fear, natural fear in our society, and it is something that there's nothing wrong with fear. It's not letting fear control you to do dumb things and to think dumb ways, and to if you do that, you need to work to get past that, because it really is, there's bigger fish to fry than some of the goofy things that we make important issues.
Yes, there's a lot more important things that we should be focusing on.
And they're goofy.
Yeah, it is. And I tell you, one of the things with the Superman issue, I do love the fact this is Man of Valor, just because, that's his name, and I like just this exploration continuing of who he is, and now that he's free from from General Lane, it's immediately he's back in the Science Police, back with his crew, back with these guys, and I like the fact that it's once again we're seeing just who he is, but he still has these underlining problems where his powers come and go, and this issue opening up, he's staring down Bizarro and Parasite, and he has no powers. And I was just like, ooh, this could be interesting.
Now, here's a funny part. It really shows, in this situation, I don't know what I do. Because we talked about, actually, it's funny to talk about this after the Secret Six issue with Black Alice talking about losing her powers from time to time because of, depending on how ambitious she gets on whose powers she takes. We're taking a look at him. He's having this problem right now because of health issues. And he stares them down and is willing to stand toe-to-toe with Bizarro and Parasite.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, to me, his stock has totally gone up. And I love that we've seen a slight change over him, because he's always been very heroic, but a slight change and a lot of character growth in him over all of this that has happened to him with General Lane kidnapping him. I love that there's a real reason for the costume change, that he's really trying to correct what he feels is a mistake in he made a promise to act for Clark, and he's taking it so far beyond, I don't think anybody else would take this responsibility to the level that he is, but he actually wants to make sure that he is doing the Superman shield proud, and not just being Mon-El here. He's trying to show them, hey, I am an agent of Superman. And you need to remember who this guy is and what he really has done here, because there is a smear campaign out here, which would, see, that's what I love so much when comics deal on real social issues and they really echo what is true about our society. It is so easy to tear somebody down in our society nowadays. This would so work. You could tear down Superman in our society today if he really existed. Our media could do it.
Oh, in a heartbeat, without hesitation or any even feeling of guilt over it, because they'd say absence of malice. This is just reporting the news. We see it all the time with various political figures, with people, and it just is popular. And it doesn't matter how popular you are. It doesn't matter. You're on the top of your game 1 second, you do one thing, and it's lambasted.
Well, let's look at Tiger Woods.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to go.
I'm not defending Tiger Woods. Don't get me wrong. What he did is legitimately wrong. So, I mean, let's get to that. But what I'm saying is, there is a guy, if you had 6 months ago said that people would be feeling this way about Tiger Woods, he would have laughed.
And it's funny, because with Tiger, I have, this household is very pro-Tiger, and it's, it's been a pain, and I'm not even saying it's been annoying to me. It's really annoying to him, but it's been a physical pain to my family, because we all love Tiger, and it was beyond just, he's a good golfer. This was a kid like, yeah, look at this, man, this is awesome, this is Tiger, and to see him the fall from grace, and I'm like, part of me still backs him. Part of me still supports the guy. If you were to walk on the golf course tomorrow, if I were to walk down the street and run into him, I'd still shake his hand. And it's, I don't like cheaters. I don't, it's very strong anti, cheating, feelings because, the marriage vows are very sacred to me. It's an upbringing that I came with my family, just the sacred nature of what the vows you make. But with Tiger, I'm kind of okay with it. Tiger, you made a mistake. You made 12 mistakes repeatedly. But I still am forgiving of him because he is Tiger. So it's funny seeing the world turn on Superman. I could, if I was sitting in Metropolis right now, I I don't think I would jump in on the anti-Superman mentality, the anti-Kryptonian mentality, but I could see myself having conflict, especially someone like General Lang. This is an American patriot, an American hero. This is a human who's standing up against this evil force that's coming down on us. I would have a hard time saying Superman's wrong.
Well, and look at the things the Kryptonians have done, though.
Yeah.
At this point in time, the Kryptonians have done so much.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but enough of them that there have been like what would be considered like 9/11 level terrorist acts that have been going on due to Kryptonians.
Yes.
And that would be something where in our society we'd look at Superman and start saying, oh, did we ever really know him?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you say, with 9/11 type events, just look at how people look at, any person who comes from that remote region. A couple friends of mine are Indian. They're from India. Nothing, to do with the Arab terrorists or anything like that. They're Hindus.
Of course not.
They're not even Muslims. And they get problems because, people look at them and they don't know, wait, is that, they look at them funny and they're like, well, we're not Muslims. We're
It goes
Hindus.
back to what we were saying at the start of this, though.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about comics is their commentary on social situations. Avatar did a lot of this, the movie Avatar, on Native Americans, and so much of what happened when, pioneers came here and started taking over, land. It's really a social statement on a lot of that. Science fiction and fantasy and comic books, and when they make commentary on real social issues, on real human issues, they make you drive yourself to be a better person. Because you sit there and you look at them, and when you see those connections, you got to sit there and say to yourself, okay, this is something that it is human, it's real, and we need to work past it. We need to be better than that. Because if we don't start somewhere, it's never going to happen. And that is one of the great things about fantasy fiction and when that is so interconnected, when there's a realism to it, and when these characters are fleshed out, you want to be them. They make you want to be better. The humanity of Mon-El, I look at him and I'm like, okay, this is a dude, look, we've seen in his origin that this guy is just finding out some deep-rooted connections to Kryptonians, some deep-rooted connections to Clark, some deep-rooted connections to humanity in general from his origin. And that's something where for him, wow, what a deep, rich story he's got now. I love this character. He's been a character where, I always loved the Legion, but, Mon-El was not a character who was on my radar as being one, and I apologize for anybody who, was a huge Mon-El fan all along. He was not one of those characters, though, where other than the fact that I've really enjoyed him in Legion stories that I've read, he was not a character where I was like, geez, yeah, Mon-El, go Mon-El. Right now, I'm go Mon-El. I always loved his interactions with Clark and how cool that was, that, he was kind of like a big brother figure in some of the later storytelling when they did that. But this, to me, is so much cooler now to see these deep-rooted connections. They've taken this character and raised his stock. And that's one thing I love. This political drama and this social drama that's going on in all of the Superman books right now feels so human. And it does make you want to be... I want to be one of those people that could say to myself, I would still stand by Mon-El. I would still stand by Clark, Superman. Yeah. After all he's done, I would still stand by him. I want to say I would do that. I would hope I would. The scary part is the media drives so much of us. I don't know, depending on what I heard and what I read, like, how would I feel? And the Tiger Woods example probably isn't really a good one there because we're talking about this is a smear campaign.
Yeah.
Which is very different. We're not what Superman's being accused of are not real. But it was a good example just to show, look how much our media was on top of what was going on with Tiger Woods. If enough of this information was put on with Superman, it would be on there as much as Michael Jackson's death was, as Tiger Woods. We would be all over this. And what would it do to us? How would it affect us? Tiger really did those things, and so I'm not questioning the morality of people being very angry about that. They have a genuine call for it, and I totally get that. The comparison fits, though, in the sense that we could be lied to. And what they're doing with Superman, it could work. If our media was on board enough and the right people were pushing it, we could be totally swerved. It would work.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I've loved about this story has been, it's opened my eyes that, our sense of moral values, our sense of what is right, and our sense of what we should and shouldn't fear, like you talked about with post 9/11, fearing people just because of, racial, how long have they been in America? How long have they, and wait, even people from that region. It's not everybody from that region's a terrorist. This is still a small portion of people, right. But they're extreme, they're activists, they're crazy. The ones that are, but you can't label everybody because of that. We've had enough atrocities from Americans doing insane things. Serial killers in America and assassins in America and people who look at David Koresh. And those type of things. We've had our own fanatics. So it is interesting, though, to see that we do fear things. I don't know. I ate that up about this, that there was so much real social connection in this book. I loved seeing him train, though, that the time with the Guardian, it's actually upped my stock in Guardian, too. Like, I'm excited to see these guys on the Justice League together. I
like seeing, the whole Guardian and Mon-El interaction. It's been, from the beginning when they started, when Mon-El first hit the scene. If you remember that first battle he had where I can't even remember who he was fighting, but he threw her basically through the concrete. And Guardian's like, did you know she'd survive that? He's like, oh, yeah. It was just stuff like that where he's like, he's the training officer. He's the big brother, the superior, his commanding officer, his trainer, his mentor. And throughout it, they've gone through that. And just the one quick warp, he does the basic judo throw of, Bizarro, looks at Guardian, just says powers. And he's like, got it. He knows, okay, his powers are down. Light them up, guys. And you just see the rest of the science police open up. They know they're not going to be able to probably completely stop and contain, but they got to give Mon-El a breathing. They got to give him some time to get his powers up. So they just unleash, a nice barrage of energy blasts on Bizarro just to keep him down a little bit. Give Mon-El the time. I love that team dynamics between him and the science police. It was a really cool, just, really nice hoorah moment for me.
And I love that Clark wouldn't be dumb enough to leave Earth without somebody there to take over for him.
Yeah.
He's got too much of and too important of a role to not have somebody there to act for him as an advocate. These are his people. For as much as he's trying to do right by Krypton and the Kryptonians, and to make, honestly, in order to defend Earth, he has to be there too, because he doesn't trust Zod, and I wouldn't either. But there's a whole lot of Zod-like people up there that you have to worry about that are loose cannons. So what he's doing makes a whole lot of sense. It's just he has to count on both places. And Mon-El's the way to do it. It's the better example.
Yes, and it's a positive reinforcement. Nice, just, it was a cool way to go with it. And I'm glad they did that. When they first started talking about, the, world of the new Krypton and Clark being not there, there was some concern I did have, but I had enough faith in the creative team. I had enough faith in the people behind the projects, and they're like, and when we were in New York, they just kept saying, Superman's not going to be there, but he's going to be there. There's going to be the presence. You're going to know this, and you're going to feel it's going to make sense to you. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit back. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to trust this, But in the back of my mind, I was wondering how this is going to play out. And I've really enjoyed seeing this. I've enjoyed seeing the growth of the characters. I'm at the point where I'd like to see them continue to stick around for a little bit, even after we get Clark back in his main titles, because I do want to see that. I do want to see Superman return back to Superman and back to Action Comics, but these are characters I don't want to just see them disappear. I want them around for a little while and continuing.
Supergirl has benefited from this.
Oh, big time!
A character. Yeah. And I'm picking her out specifically because she's a character who had been around in her own title before all of this, and we'd both been enjoying. But it kicked it up to, such an incredible level with her. Her growth as a character and my interest in her as a character. She is incredibly important to me now, and honestly. The Supergirl concept in the DCU should be a strong concept. It should be a character that's up there, on the top tier level. She should be up there with, and Batgirl should be as well. And I'm hoping that Batgirl will get. I'm liking the new Batgirl series. I'd like to see that get up to, the same level where Supergirl
Yeah.
is at. Because I do really feel right now we've got an iconic Supergirl. I think there's something about her that's cool and interesting. She's very today, very contemporary, and she feels like a hero now.
Definitely, and it's one of those things. When we talked about the Wonder Woman the last time, where I admitted that there's no way I could have, as a kid, read a female title. Supergirl is another one of those titles where, when I was a kid and I was younger, there's no way I would have read Supergirl just because I was an insecure little idiot.
And
but now
I
I'm
did.
like,
There's a distinction between us. I always liked Supergirl.
yeah,
I read the old one, the old red headband Supergirl. I liked her a lot. And the headband thing is funny because it was a very 80s thing with her. It was kind of a look that went along with her before she died. And I did read that character and followed that character, and I liked her quite a bit. I didn't read every single issue because I didn't have the budget for it, but I more than a lot of characters, I read a lot of her run. There was something about that character I always found interesting, and she was cool. I think what it was, her relationship with the Barbara Gordon Batgirl I thought was pretty cool as well. Just we'd see every so often the two of them together in situations and how they play. I liked how the Superman universe was a lot more interconnected through books like World's Finest and through the family books and things like that than you would expect. I think it was kind of cool. So I like when Mon-El, my powers are back. I'm on it.
yeah,
And it's that
beautiful
moment.
2-page spread.
Yeah, just no hesitation. This is a guy who is a veteran, who just kind of bursts on out there, and we see him with Bizarro at this point, and then seeing Parasite. I liked seeing this. I like the science team the same way that I like the Gotham City Police Department now, the Science Police, I should say. It's great to see a further development of this and kind of expanding the supporting cast of the Superman universe, because I think that makes a book more interesting. And if you're going to have multiple Superman books, you need things like this that will make various books unique and various situations unique. And you got to care about the other characters. You want to be interested in them. And I like that these characters are being developed now. They're actually interesting, and you want to know their stories. And that was an important, I think, side effect of all of this, has been with each book having a unique character focus. You've seen an expansion of our understanding of a lot of these characters. And boy, did they do a good job with Captain Atom.
Oh yeah, and I liked how when they're the team's going after Parasite, he's like, no, they'll send me back to Lane. And I love seeing just how, once again, and we know what nasty stuff is going on, but the police are like, oh yeah, like I'll lose sleep over that. And it's, I like seeing these just multiple levels, because that's a very real reaction. Had they known what exactly he's doing, and that Lane is not the hero that he's claiming to be and that he's being portrayed as, maybe they wouldn't have hesitation to stop Parasite, but there would be definite hesitation in turning Parasite back over to him.
That would be something where, especially we saw what happened with Mon-El. I think that was the great thing about the Mon-El segment, is we got to see it done to a hero. And how far they were actually willing to go with him and what Mon-El went through. And how it's changed him. Mon-El's come out changed. He's hardened from this.
Yeah.
Not to the point where he's, dark and brooding Mon-El, but it has invigorated him to be a lot more serious in his approach. It has altered him in major ways. And I like that about him. It's shown he's got a maturity about him now. It's not the way you want to get it. And that's, to me, is interesting as well. Like, I love Bizarro speak, trying to figure out Bizarro speak. Powers am working. And
Yeah.
my powers working good. Realizing that they aren't.
Yeah, it was funny because when I first read it, I keep forgetting. Usually, a lot of times with Bizarro, I'll forget I got to think backwards and I got to think opposites and stuff like that. And then, especially when I read that, and me not bringing Bizarro Mon-El with me, I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna see Bizarro Mon-El in this. Ooh, definitely looking forward to seeing that. I'm kind of wondering what happens with the Bizarro Mon-El and Lead. Is now obviously Lead's not going to be the weakness. What is going to be his weakness?
Now, this is interesting, the whole rocket situation with Mon-El.
Yeah.
What is he up to there? And
well, one thing I was wondering, is he thinking about going to Bizarro World, or is he thinking about going to Daxam? Mm-hmm. Is he thinking about going to New Krypton?
Well, I wonder through the pressure experiments that were being done on him and things like that. I wonder what this, because I mean he's learned a lot about himself and his history and things like that. So there's a lot of places he could go with this, and I wonder if we're gonna the more of the mystery of Mon-El. Also, we still got to deal with the fact that Mon-El is not long for this world,
right?
And I can't help but wonder if he isn't looking at what can I do to change that on some level. I don't know. It's interesting to see where this is all going to go. I love him. I'm really curious to see what the landscape's going to look like when this is all done, because at this point I am heavily invested in all of these characters.
Yeah, and I like the Mon-El Connor interaction. I do like seeing these two together. It's not exactly the big brother, little brother that Clark and Connor have, but there is a very similar vibe to it.
I actually like the fact that Superboy is more of in Mon-El's eyes, seems like more of the veteran.
Yeah.
Like Mon-El's kind of deferring to him.
Yeah.
And trying to get advice from him and get help from him. I like seeing, because Superboy's been around long enough that, and as an operating hero, longer than Mon-El. So I do like that role. It's nice to see Connor in that role and being given that nod of longevity. It was a great moment. I thought it was very well written. It did play off of the fact that this is not a newbie. This isn't I remember Superboy when he was first introduced with his old leather jacket, and he was more of, a snotty kid and things like that. I love that this character has grown out of that. And the sense of progression with him, I think, is fabulous. Because, I've followed him. He's another one, we talk about following Tim Drake. I've followed this character since the beginning. And to see where he's at now, that's cool. I mean, it is one of the great things about continuity and where it works and time is it's fun to follow characters through progression and to see them grow. And that's where I love, I'm anxious to see Bruce Wayne come back. I'm anxious to see Clark come back. But these are things that I love as well. And these are characters you can do it with. You need those iconic characters like a Bruce Wayne and a Clark to be in those spots. There's something comforting about a Superman. There's something comforting about Bruce Wayne as Batman. But then it's fun to see their supporting cast and, their former sidekicks and things like that grow into their own and become men and become women and, see Wonder Girl, what's going on with her, and see Donna Troy, what's going on with her, and how these characters can change. In many ways, they can change to an extreme that I don't think you can't do with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. You have to get more clever and creative with them in the ways that you change them and make them feel like they've had progression. Because they have. Clark, Bruce, and Diana have all had progression. We've seen some great examples of it. I think the Diana who we're reading now is different than she was a few years ago. And that's something that has shown growth. And, I think that's cool. But I think it's different. And I think there's things you can do with a Connor Kent that you can't do with a Clark. And with a Mon-El. And it's fun. These moments are great. Yeah. They read like Tim Drake and Dick Grayson.
Yeah, it's definitely given the creative teams a little bit more flex and a little bit more wiggle room with the Superman mythos. Because we couldn't really... they couldn't really change... You can't change Superman who he is. And these stories were getting a chance to get someone who's like Superman, who's got, a very, almost identical power set. But it's, it gives you a little bit of freedom of saying, what if? Let's tweak this around. When the Asbat came around, they changed around what Batman was going to be like, how Batman would be a little bit different. And when Bruce came back in the title, there was nothing left of that Asbat in it. Now, some of the stuff we've talked about, in the Batman episode we had, where we said when Bruce does eventually put the cowl back on, he's going to have to adopt some of the stuff that Dick Grayson did. He's going to have to keep some of that stuff going forward. So Bruce is going to have to be a different Batman. When Clark comes back onto the scene, I don't see Superman having to change how he was. He will have some interactions, problems, and issues with the people of Metropolis. Because the
world has changed.
Right. The people will still believe General Lane. When he is eventually exposed for what he is, and I know there's no doubt in my mind he will get eventually exposed because, this is the Superman title. They're not going to keep him the world against Superman, but there will be still people who, once the truth is out there, once they're exposed to the truth, will still hold on to the hatred, will still hold on to the anti-Kryptonian feeling because, to be honest, hatred's easier. It's easier to hate somebody than to love somebody. It's easier to look and find the negative in something than look for the positive, look for the good. And that's a sad nature of human nature, that it's easier for us to hate somebody and to be angry at somebody than for us to be accepting and loving and go, yes, you're my friend, you're my pal. So it is, kind of going to be, that's going to be a very interesting thing to see how that happens. And I'm going to be curious to see if Mon-El has to end up kind of smoothing the way for Superman to get back in the good graces. If there's going to have to be, if the people are more trusting of Mon-El than more trusting than they are of Superman initially.
Here's the funny part is, I would actually buy a World Against Superman title.
Really?
Well, think about it this way. It'd be a street-level exploration of how the people are feeling about everything that's going on right now with Superman. We kind of see those events from their perspective.
Yeah.
And get into their heads and all that. I mean, we're getting that in the books to a certain extent. But, I mean, like a real street-level exploration, like Man on the Street and all that stuff. I'm not as a ongoing, but like as a mini-series, I would be into that. I would actually like to, because I like seeing, like just what you were saying about how some people would still be feeling that way and things like that. I think those would be interesting stories to read, seeing different perspectives. I mean, I get into that kind of stuff. I would read that.
It's funny, as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, so would I. That would be kind of cool. I would do it kind of like formatting, like it's news article, combination of news articles, TV articles, and also just people interaction. Maybe like have a scene in a deli type thing where people are talking, they're talking about an article, or they're talking about this, Cat Grant story, or that Edge dude, maybe like, kind of talking about that, and just their interaction they're dealing with it. And you could even throw in some references to like a Superman event going on, and it's the crowd watching the event go down. So, see, it told you, no, he's a good guy. He's fighting the bad guys. Is he really? And, that kind of interaction. There'd be some interesting stuff you could do with that. You could do it with or without some meta powers flashing.
But also you would think that people would be changing their stories about previous events with Superman that they were a part of.
Yeah.
That they witnessed, saying, I knew all along because of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I mean, there would be conversations like that and then seeing actual, comic artwork showing that person's perspective on those events and how they could have made that assumption based on the way the media was smearing things. I think that's just, to me, I'm like, whoa, that would be incredibly interesting because it would be so easy to see in how today's society that would happen. And I think that would be fun.
That would be kind of.
I was laughing when you said that. We don't want a world against Superman. I'm kind of like, well, I kind of would read that. I mean, not as there's only so long it would be able to go on because you're eventually going to move beyond this. But I love the place Mon-El is in, where they ask the question, why wouldn't Mon-El just say something? Why wouldn't Mon-El be the one to reveal Lane? Well, here's why. Yeah. Lane was one step ahead of him.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful, just,
chess
once again, this is a military general. If you're anti-military or not, to become a general, you have to have a functioning brain. You have to have at least a doctorate, before you can pin on that star. So this is a man who's had some education. He's probably, poli-sci, multiple times over. This is not somebody who's going to just let you, go in and reveal everything. No, he's laying down the groundwork already. He knows people are going to hold on to the hatred. They're going to hold on to the story, and he's now giving them justification. If Mon-El goes public with all this stuff, boom, right there. He's already got his defense, and he knows people will buy it. People will believe him that it's all a giant Kryptonian trick. They've tricked Mon-El into thinking we were torturing him. We wouldn't do that. We were looking for him. We're the good guys. We know Mon-El's a good guy. He's not a Kryptonian. And I love seeing that. It was
Plus,
just
he's got
beautiful
life experience. Experience. You cannot take away from that. That is so cool there because you hate him, but you understand how he's able to do this. And that to me is a far more compelling villain. When you're like, he could do this so easily. He could do this. Like what he's doing on these screens, you could do that, and it would make people like. And the funny part is the girl so obviously has a thing for Mon-El.
Yeah.
And she believes in him because of that, and there was a relation, and she knows who he is at his core. She's got a personal and I love that, because that read very real to me. Guardian's attitude was surprising to me.
Yeah. I was actually shocked that he didn't say, yes, I believe you.
Yes.
I was actually a little bit surprised by that, and I'm trying to figure that out. That's the one thing I'm like, is this more of a multi-layer thing, or is he just keeping his options open? Is he not revealing too much while he's Guardian? Is it one of those things where he's like, as Guardian, I have to be more reserved, I have to hold back?
Here's the question, though. Sir, you do believe me about Lane, about Metello and Mirabai in the sewer. That Supergirl and the 2 Kryptonians are innocent. I believe you're a good kid. I believe Metropolis is a better place for you being here. Way to go sidestepping my question. Now, here's the interesting part. He asked a lot of Guardian there. He wasn't just asking about himself. He was asking about Supergirl and the 2 Kryptonians. So I do believe that if he asked him, do you believe in me, Guardian would come back and say, yes, I do. Does he believe in the 2 Kryptonians and Supergirl? I don't know.
Well, he's definitely still has his issues. But here's the thing. It's, and this is I know it's a very extreme thing, but if you were to say, hey, here's so-and-so, he's a friend of mine, I would immediately say, okay, he's a friend of Sean's. I can probably trust the guy. He's all right. It's that kind of deal. Now, we are going a whole nother level of this. If we were, say, a guy was accused of robbing a bank, and you were to say, oh, no, I know it's not him. He's a friend of mine. That I still would have an issue. I still would say, I trust you, Sean. You're a great guy, but I still got to investigate this guy.
Sure.
I still got to turn him into the cops. And it's that whole duality that I have those issues with, where on one hand, I'm like, yeah, he should do it. Then as soon as I start thinking, like a cop, then I'm like, I can't. You can't. These are criminals. It's not just about saying this is a good person. These people are accused of being criminals. They're accused of murdering police. I gotta have restraint. I gotta still suspect them until I can produce, solid, tangible evidence saying they're innocent.
But you'd trust me if I said I had nothing to do with it.
Yes.
You'd believe they swerved me somehow or something like that. You'd believe there'd be all kinds of possibilities. There'd be A here, there's B here, there's C here. I believe you when you say you weren't involved in that, but, they could be totally snowing you. Yeah. And that's where I think it becomes realistic as well. It's very cool.
Yeah. Definitely. And I tell you, when we talk about just we always say how it's cool to read these comics multiple times through. It was like a 2 or 3 read-throughs that I really got a firm grasp on why he did what he did and why he sidestepped it. But in a way, he sidestepped it, but didn't completely. He still had his declaration of trust in Mon-El, but there is other issues. It's not just about trusting Mon-El. It's about doing his job. He is a cop. This is what he's got to do. It's protect and serve, the public interest. And they may be good guys. They may not be. Right now, he's got to, figure that out.
We got to talk about Jimmy Olsen.
Well, just one quick thing.
Oh, sure.
I loved the lineup, how they're all at attention. And it's just that whole, I loved seeing that. That's just a really cool thing. This is a guy who they all thought was dead. He is not dead. He's back. And it's, it's that honoring of, the return of one of your brethren. They're welcoming him back. And it's like, good to have you back. All right. I really ate this up. This was just a cool, couple panels for me, kind of like that whole, 100% acceptance back in who you are. You're back. You're one of us. You're part of this crew. And I ate that up.
Perry and Jimmy, I was so worried about this. Because I didn't know what they were going to do with this, with Jimmy Olsen. Are they going to kill Jimmy? What's going to happen there? I was worried because I'm very into Jimmy. I thought from the specials he was very cool. I had to believe deep down there was somebody. I guess I was always believing Mon-El was going to be the one to save him. So when Mon-El was taken out of action, I really thought there was a genuine worry about, Jimmy's life. I love that the creature that Mon-El freed was the one that saved Jimmy.
Yes. Nice little kind of, matching up, and we know we're going to see more of that creature. And this was even further evidence that we're going to see more of this creature, which I'm kind of glad. I want to see where they play out, and when I knew Jimmy wasn't going to die. I knew for a fact, just in my heart, that they weren't going to kill him off. But I didn't know how they were going to bring him back, how they were going to keep him alive, if he was going to survive on his own. I didn't even think of the creature helping him, but it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I just need to know how they do it. And they did this nice, boom, quick explanation, done, move on with the story, and continuation of Jimmy Olsen. I liked that. I really ate. This was a good, well played out panels, and introducing, just bringing back Natasha Irons into the whole mix, and just having her be the covert op. It's again, some really cool spy stuff, and it's going to be interesting to see how all these characters play out, but also really curious to see, once everything's done, once we've completely gone through the story arc, what are their places going to be in the city of Metropolis? Because she's making, once again, a strong hero presence of herself. And, once again, and we're going to be bringing back John Henry soon, which I'm really looking forward to round 2 of John Henry versus Atlas.
Matter Eater Lad being here from the Legion is interesting. There's a Legion presence, and how much of a Legion presence is here we don't know. Matter Eater Lad's definitely here, though, and I wonder how much of this is Legion history, where they're interacting to make sure events go a certain way, and being there as support in ways that we don't realize yet, because this would be history to them.
Yes.
So it is interesting to see his being there is no accident. And I can't help but wonder if he's not there because Mon-El is here and making sure Mon-El survives.
Well, you think about back in Adventure Comics, they talk about just, the past and the connection, and we had that one team up with Sunboy and
Polar
what's
Boy.
his name? Yeah, Polar Boy. Yeah. And when they captured the bad guy, the bad guy had a map of this timeline. And what? You think you're the only ones who have operatives back then? So I'm thinking Matter Eater, Matter Eating Lad, say that one 10 times fast, is going to be kind of connected in with that story arc as well. What's going on with the Legion? What are they doing? And that was something I really liked seeing. That I'm like, oh, hey, when he first started eating the thing, I'm like, who is that? What the heck's going on? And then I started remembering there was a Legion story I remember reading where someone ate something. I'm like, okay, yeah, I think he's a Legionnaire, isn't it? And, jump online and, had to do a little Googling and a little wiki, searching. But it was kind of a neat thing. Like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I know what's going on now. But it was one of those, I like seeing that. It was a kind of a cool nod, and the fact that he's identified and then he just disappears was a great thing there.
Well, and any time with time, it's one of the things that I really, really love. There are set points. Actually, Doctor Who's exploring this right now in an incredibly interesting way. The fact that there are certain set points in history, and some of them you can't change. Some of them you can change, but if you change them, they will have horrible consequences. So you have to be careful anytime with time. You have to be, if you're going to get involved on any level, you have to pick your spots. You have to be very careful what you're doing and anything that you might think is insignificant. One little thing that you could do that's wrong or deviates history could change yours and wreck your future. So for them, they got to be, very careful as far as any involvement that they get into in what they do. They might try to avert a disaster and cause a bigger one. So it is. I love when time is involved. I'm curious to see what their goal is and what they're trying to do there, because they're going to be exploring these events from outsiders looking in because they've already happened to them. So they've got a different perspective on the whole thing. They know where events will go and how they will play out. What are they trying to change? What are they trying to make sure happens, and why? Because you would think, not necessarily that they're always trying to change something. They might also be trying to fight to make sure that something actually does happen. So I don't know. It's I guess there's rumors or hints at a major character death out of all this.
Ooh.
And I'm wondering who.
There's a couple options out there, but Yeah, it's funny because if there's a major character death, I'm worried. In a way, I'm worried about Mon-El because
I'm worried about Lana as well.
Yeah, Lana's another one. She's got a definite bullseye on her.
Mm-hmm.
The one I was thinking could possibly happen is Perry, because you think about it, he and Jimmy are starting to get into the investigation mode, and maybe Perry gets a little bit too close and finds something, and they kill off Perry White. That would be a huge thing.
I want to see more of this from the Daily Planet, though, going forward. Like, I really like this. Like, with bringing back the bullpen of the Daily Planet and having them involved with real, true investigative reporting, with Lois quitting her job in order to really tell the story. And, I mean, those things I get into that stuff. I mean, it's really well handled. It's very cool. It gets to the core. These guys have long history together, and what newspaper reporting actually means to them is interesting. I love that. I mean, this is, to me... That to me is a strength of all this.
And it's funny because we talked about the World Against Superman idea for Mini. The other Mini I always have an idea on, I think it would be cool to see, is the Daily Planet.
Oh yeah,
and it would be following the different members of the bullpen.
They've done it before
pursuing
too.
A story.
They've done miniseries like that before.
Oh really?
Yeah. In the I have to go back and take a look where I've read them before though.
Oh okay.
I've read at least one that was really focused on that end of it. I mean, obviously there was a Superman element to it, but it was more focused on their perspective of it. And they've done issues that have focused on that as well.
Yeah,
I'm with you though. I would love kind of like what Gotham Central was at the time. Taking it even further, I would read an ongoing.
Well, and I was just about to say, I think it would be an idea, to go with. An ongoing, but it's the ongoing is the paper, and you would have one story arc that's the Daily Planet, another one's the Gotham Gazette, then the Centralville Tribune and Coast City, Daily Sun or whatever you're going to call the different names, and you go with the different cities with the different heroes, and you would have obviously
the Coast City Guardian.
What?
Coast City Guardian.
Oh yeah, Coast City Guardian, great name. There you go. And just of course, throw out the Cleveland Plain Dealer, just because you got to have, at least a one shot. Come on, give us something, But that'd
a real
be an
paper.
What?
With a real paper, you mean?
Yeah.
That's funny. It would be all about Sir Thomas of Cleveland.
Exactly, or even just anything. Just give us some love somewhere. Come on, we've gotten some
love in comics, though.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, it's interesting to see with John Henry back. I loved those bits with John Henry, where he wakes up. He's being kind of like pleaded with by Natasha to please come back and all that. Yeah. And he wakes up, and the first thing out of his mouth when he kind of realized, Atlas.
Oh yeah.
He knows he's been swerved, and that was a very powerful moment.
Round 2, baby.
Yeah, and I want to see
that one.
Yeah. He's a character who I've always loved.
Yeah, and I tell you, we glossed over her, but just Natasha. I'm liking seeing her. Mm-hmm. When everything that's gone on with her, where her powers, I don't know if she still has them or not, and it's everything's kind of goofy that way. But she is a cool character, and I'm glad to see she's not somebody that they just dropped and forgot about. They're trying to bring her back, and I kind of like her in this light being used this way, where she is, it's, as I said, it's this kind of espionage type spy element to her, really catering to her strengths, as she's a very intelligent young lady who has a good experience with this crazy lifestyle of superheroism. So she's got a good solid base, and she would make an ideal spy on this. We've had a couple issues where they've introduced her. They've showed she has some good deductive reasoning skills. She's a very intelligent scientist. She's not as good as John Henry, but she's getting there, and she's getting there really quickly. And especially the current events we're seeing, this is something kind of a motivation for her to step up the game and show everybody, this is who I am. Let's rock and roll. And I'm really liking seeing her, and I want to see more of her in either this title, other titles, or just a usage of her. And I'm hoping with John Henry up in rounds and just everything they've started introducing here, we're going to get some really cool Natasha moments.
She feels like, from where she was in the Everyday Man project, like she's matured and evolved in a way that she should from how that all played out with prior to Final Crisis and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that has expanded, and she does feel like a character who's been through those events, and that there's been some time that's passed, and life has matured her, and that's kind of cool. Jimmy as well, with the rationalization that he needs to be dead in order to be able to explore the things, because he won't be watched. He won't be on somebody's radar because they don't know he exists.
Yeah.
And it's really the only way for him to get the information that they need and to get real dirt to pull on General Lane. It's very cool. Now, I liked this relationship that...
Bounce, go wow wow.
Yeah,
bounce, go wow wow. Once you go Dex, you never go back.
That was funny.
I love that.
That was funny. And I like that he didn't understand the pop culture reference, though. Yeah, because it's a blatant pop culture reference, and I love that he didn't get it. I love also that he's awkward. He doesn't know proper etiquette. He doesn't know to kiss her beforehand. What does this relationship mean to him? And I do have a feeling that he's noble, and it does mean something to him, and, his heart's in the right place. He also has this intense responsibility, though, and it is hard to have a relationship with a superhero like him, because his overarching priorities is going to be being this man who's filling in for Superman, being this hero, taking on that role, and rushing out like that and not knowing how to handle it is something that's a true test of a relationship. Hard on a brand new relationship, because she had no idea what she was in for.
And I'm funny. I'm curious to see how Clark's always was listening to Lois. If if Mon-El was listening to her when he flew off, and she said a kiss would have been nice. If maybe next time he'll go, I heard you last time, sorry, and give her a little peck on the cheek and go, kind of thing. Or if he didn't hear her at all. If
he was so focused on
the task at hand.
Because, we all tune things out, even if we hear them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we tune out outside extra noise, and, where you could literally be telling me things directly, and I'm so focused on something else that I didn't hear. Even when we recorded the show, we've both had moments like that where we were focused on the next thing we wanted to talk about so much that we didn't completely hear what the other was saying, and that type of thing. That's normal. That's a human thing. Is he going through that? I'm going to be curious. I'm with you. I'm curious to see, did he hear it? Did he not? And
is he going to learn from his lesson? Someone's got to sit him down and say, okay, buddy, here's the rules, man. Because we all had that friend who's helped us out when we do bonehead stuff with the members of the opposite sex, saying, hey, help me out here. You got to do this. Says, oh, okay, gotcha. You got to learn the game. You got to learn what's expected, what's nice, what's considered polite, what's considered appropriate and inappropriate. So I'm curious to see them develop this part of the story. How much detail they're going to give on this. They've given us some really good growth of him as a person on this planet, so this part is going to be interesting, and it's going to be curious to see who he goes to for advice on this. Is he going to go to Guardian on this, or is he going to seek outside counsel elsewhere?
I do think that's what's interesting about him being alien, is somehow we're seeing a guy, we've all been here with first relationships. And you're right. It is the important thing is, who does he talk to? Ideally, it would be her. Because, that's always the best thing for a relationship, would be her talking to him and him talking to her. Where is this? And does this have the potential to go anywhere? Because a lot of his future, we know that he has a deep relationship in the Legion in the future. So it's interesting to see this for him this is a young Mon-El who has not experienced anything that he will experience in the Legion yet. So that becomes incredibly interesting at this point to see this version of history with him, because it is a blank slate, and I love it. I think that's really cool. And I love the way that the cliffhanger, we got Trouble with a K, and we do get to see here now Nightwing and Flamebird, the two that Mon-El has been telling Guardian are innocent, popping out of the door here with the Superman symbols on them. They're taking on a more proactive role in trying to promote the Superman name and trying to save it. And how acceptable is that going to be? They're showing allegiance there as well. I love this. I absolutely love this, and I want to see them around for a long time as well, because their characters, Nightwing and Flamebird, have been incredibly interesting for me too. I loved seeing what Nightwing went through with the aging. And
that was a cool story with the aging and the reversing of it and everything that had to get done. Yeah.
The duality, though, of Flamebird.
Flamebird, yes.
And knowing that she does not always realize what's going on when she's in the Flamebird form. That there actually is an entity present. Is there a Nightwing entity, then? And what is that like? We haven't seen that. We've seen the Flamebird, but not Nightwing. At least not directly. So I'm curious to see what that is all going to play out like. That bringing that kind of lore and mythos into there, that's interesting to me. Like, you're expanding out and branching that there is a religious lore to Krypton, and that these things actually exist, and that it is something that they have been going on with faith. There's stories that have been handed down through generations, but they're faith-based stories. Now it's a reality. What does that mean? What'll that mean ultimately for Krypton? Or New Krypton, I should say. Because that is something that is going to have to play out there on some level. What are they going to do when they realize that Nightwing and Flamebird, the entities, really do exist? Because not everyone believes that. Even Kara. It took time for Kara to believe that, and she had to see it for herself to understand that, oh my gosh, she never really was. She was always telling the truth about this. And that showed, I love their relationship, that these two grew up together, and that there was a rift between them, and why there was a rift, and that they had to come back together after Dad's death, and how Dad meant so much to her, to Flamebird as well. That I think it's just, to me, that this storytelling has been so rich, and they were so right that the Superman mythos wasn't lost in this. It was only expanded and added to, and they brought in so much from the past and made it work today in a way that just makes sense. And that's what I love. I love that it feels big. The Superman world feels very big right now. And that's very cool. And that Clark affects it all. They all want to be better because of Clark. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out. We got a long ride ahead of us because, we know what that big event that's coming in 2010 and what that's all going to look like. But I wanted to make sure we ended off the year talking again about Superman. And
we got to.
You and I will be doing episodes like this more often. Where we just kind of get together and talk a couple books. And put out a show based on them.
Do a nice light episode, a short one.
Yeah, well, it's not so much. I don't mean it on that sense. I think it's important, though, every so often for us to realize, okay, we need to take a stop for a couple seconds. There's some books that we haven't talked about that are currently going on that we really need to get to now because we haven't talked about them in a while. It's a way to be try to be as comprehensive as possible. One of the ones we had the bump from today, we want to talk about Power Girl, and we will talk about Power Girl. That's a book that I want to talk about that I'm loving. So,
big time.
Because both of these two got bumped from the last episode. But short, quick hits, at least for us, short, quick hits. And let's just wrap up with that. Superman, very cool.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
Jim, our next episode is going to be JSA focused. We're going to be Donnie Salvo's joining us actually from the Reality Wasted podcast. I've been wanting to get Donnie on for some time. We haven't had a chance to have him on the show. He's been a great supporter with voicemails and things like that. So Donnie's going to come on to talk about JSA and the Blackest Night JSA issue that are coming out. So it's going to be, we're just focusing on those two issues. It's going to be, I want to say it's a little bit of a shorter show, but this was supposed to be a little bit of a shorter show. It didn't work it out. So we'll see what that one turns out to be. But we'll be back with that in a few days. Check out the website and the forums for more information on when that's coming out. We're going to follow that episode up with Blackest Night 5 and 6. And I'm sure on that episode we're going to be talking about the Green Lantern issue that came out. We're featuring John Stewart. We're also going to be talking about the events with Kyle Rayner and Guy Gardner and the most recent Green Lantern Corps issue. So we've got 2 episodes that are coming to you that are pretty meaty on events that are going on in the DC Universe. Then we're jumping right back to Preacher. So it'll be those 2, and that'll be our next recording in studio here, where we'll be doing Preacher. So we have a method to the madness. Then we'll do Raging Oscars after that. So a lot of things coming down the pipeline for us. We got a lot of content planned. Anyway, thank you for listening as always. Happy New Year to you, and we will see you in a few days.
Bye.